Chapter 2881. The price could be big or small, and there were all kinds of methods. Some used secret techniques to exchange for it, some used magic treasures to exchange for it, and some used enough gold, silver, and jewels to exchange for it. After all, such a big hidden sword villa needed to eat. Of course, it wasn't like he hadn't met those poor sword masters who needed to do something for the villa in exchange. No matter what, the divine sword didn't choose a master based on wealth or poverty. As long as one was fated and had the ability, anyone could be chosen as the master of the divine sword. Because the hidden sword villa was only open for one day and it was built on the extremely remote Snow Dragon Mountain, everyone would come early to fight for this opportunity. Some of the more impatient ones even came a few days early. In order to accommodate these people, the hidden sword villa specially built an inn at the foot of the mountain. Because this inn was only used once every few hundred years, it was the kind of inn that didn't open for 100 years and ate for 1,000 years. The price of the room was very expensive, and the facilities were not very good. There were only a dozen or so single rooms, and a night's stay cost 1,000 taels of gold. The others were all large bunks. Each person would need 50 taels of gold to stay a night. Even so, the inn was still packed with people, especially the single rooms, which were fought over by many rich people. They had all booked them a few days in advance. Those who could go up the mountain were not incompetent people. Money was like dirt in their eyes, so most people could still afford the accommodation fee. As for those who couldn't afford it, they could only stay in the big trees outside the inn, in the shacks, or in the straw huts. Ji Xinyu had asked Xie Fenglu to go a few days in advance so that he could book 2 single rooms. Although she was dressed as a man, she still didn't want to sleep with a group of men. She thought that since Xie Fenglu had arrived 10 days early, he would definitely be able to book a good single room. She didn't expect to find out after meeting him that the single rooms had all been booked. Some people even went half a month in advance. When Xie Fenglu arrived, there was only one room left. This was because he was fast enough to snatch it. If he was a quarter of an hour later, he wouldn't even be able to keep that room. Ji Xinyu looked at Xie Fenglu's apologetic face and felt a headache coming on. She began to wonder if she should let Xie Fenglu stay in the large bunk and take the single room for herself. She looked around the inn. This inn provided food and accommodation, so the hall of the inn was not small. It was also dinner time, so there were many people in the hall, and most of them were in pairs. Ji Xinyu was confused. Because there were not many women who practiced martial arts on this continent, and the swords produced by the hidden sword villa were all majestic and vigorous, most of the people who came here to ask for a sword were heroes from all walks of life. There were almost no women. The number of women who came this time could only be described as dazzling. There were more than a dozen of them in the hall. Fat and thin, pink and green, and they were all stunning beauties. Most of these women had a man by their side, and they seemed to be the man's family or lover. Of course, there were also some who were not lovers of other families. They were surrounded by 4 or 5 men who were attentive to them. Ji Xinyu and Xie Fenglu sat down at a table. After looking around, they asked, "Why are there so many women here?" Xie Fenglu poured her a cup of wine. "Brother Xin, you probably don't know, but this time, the 1,000-year divine sword that the hidden sword villa wants to recognize as its master is a female sword." Because in front of others, Xie Fenglu automatically called her brother Xin. Female sword? So there's also a male sword? Ji Xinyu raised her eyebrows. She knew that swords were divided into male and female. Chapter 2882. She knew that swords were divided into male and female, but it usually referred to the Mandarin duck swords. A long and wide sword was the male sword, while a sharp and thin sword was the female sword. The appearance and style of the sword were all the same. Xie Fenglu shook his head. "I don't know. I only know that the divine sword this time is called the plain maiden sword by the hidden sword manor. It's for women. That's why these people brought their family members who are good at martial arts here. There are also some famous female immortals who travel alone in the martial arts world." Xie Fenglu pouted at one of the tables. "Do you see that? That's the plain maiden Yu Shuashang." She had taken the second room in the inn. That room was specially reserved for her by immortal monarch Lu Hui. Ji Xinyu had heard of Yu Shuashang. She was born in a humble family, but she was very beautiful. She also learned a lot of skills in a big sect, and her martial arts had reached the level of an immortal. She was cold and arrogant, and was called the #1 ice beauty in the martial arts world. Ji Xinyu had only heard of her before, but this was the first time she saw her in person. Yu Shuashang sat there in a white dress. Her skin was as white as snow, and her eyes were full of spirit. Her every move was like the wind returning to the snow. She was indeed an ice beauty. Her pretty face was always tense, as cold as ice. Sitting across from her was a man in luxurious robes. He was none other than Lu Hui, Immortal Monarch, who was known as the richest young master in the Sannin continent. Lu Hui Immortal's martial arts were not peerless, but he had a good father. It was said that the Lu family was even richer than the four emperors, so Lu Hui Immortal was very extravagant. Wherever he went, he was like a child of wealth. His favorite saying was, "This young master will pay for all the food in this restaurant. Everyone eat as much as you want." Thus, he was very popular wherever he went. He had a lot of friends around him, and there were also a lot of women around him. According to Xie Fenglu, the pioneer of gossip, Lu Hui Immortal Monarch had originally brought along a charming female companion, and wanted to fight for that sword for her. After booking the room, he accidentally saw Yu Shuashang. He was shocked and immediately drove away the female companion he had been doting on. He began to fawn on Yu Shuashang and even gave his room to her. This was why the single rooms were full so many days in advance. He had brought his family and there were many women. Naturally, all of them wanted a single room. The Hidden Sword Manor had probably expected this situation, so they changed the main hall, which originally only allowed people to sleep on the bunk beds, into small rooms that looked like pigeon cages, for the women who came late and did not book a single room. Even these small rooms were not cheap, and each one cost 100 taels of gold. Fortunately, these women's appearances were pretty, and some of the male heroes who wanted to curry favor with them paid for them. Xie Fenglu briefly explained the situation and chuckled. "Senior sister, if you reveal your true appearance, there will probably be a lot of people who will want to give their single rooms to you. These women won't have anything to do with you." Ji Xinyu glanced at him from the corner of her eyes. "I think that if you dress up as a woman, you'll also be a great beauty. There will also be people who will give you a single room so you don't have to sleep in a shared bed, right?" Xie Fenglu. He blinked and looked like he was about to cry. "Brother Shin, you and I are brothers. I specially booked this single room and even added a bed. At night, we brothers can talk by candlelight. You actually want to drive me out to sleep? How can you bear to do this?" Chapter 2883. Although his voice was not loud, the people at the next table were all experts among experts, so they naturally heard him clearly. Countless pairs of eyes looked towards Ji Xinyu and Xie Fengliu's table. Ji Xinyu and Xie Fenglu were both dressed in men's clothing, and their appearances were both handsome and outstanding. Xie Fengliu's baby face was especially likable. The two of them sat there like pearls and jade, reflecting each other's brilliance. Although Xinyu and Xie Fenglu were very famous in this continent, there were not many who really knew them. After all, one of them was often in the Purple Cloud sect, while the other kept a low profile. In the end, there were still two people present who recognized them. These two people were originally talking in a low voice, but when they heard the commotion they looked over. One person's eyes lit up as he called out, "Brother Shin." He walked over with large strides and sat down beside Ji Xinyu. His wolf claw touched her shoulder. "Brother Shin, I finally found you." The veins on Ji Xinyu's forehead jumped 3 times in joy. This person was none other than Rongyue Tianheng. The other person also walked over and cupped his fists towards Xie Fenglu. "Young Master Xie, what a coincidence, we meet again." This person's face was like jade, and his eyes were like bright stars. He was actually a handsome man. Ji Xinyu did not know this person, but she knew that he was an old acquaintance of Xie Fenglu. He raised the wine cup in his hand, just in time to block Rongyue Tianheng's wolf claw. "Tianheng, it's rare for us to meet, let's have a drink." Rongyue Tianheng had always accepted Xinyu's wine, and immediately gulped down a cup. The two of them took advantage of the situation and sat down at their table. The handsome young master sat down beside Xie Fenglu, but Xie Fenglu obviously did not welcome him. "What are you doing here?" The young master smiled slightly. "Of course I'm here for the divine sword." Xie Fenglu raised his eyebrows. "That's a female sword, could it be that young Master Huang also has a girl he likes?" Young Master Huang stroked a bamboo flute in his hand, smiled and raised the wine cup in front of him. "Come, let's have a drink together." Ji Xinyu asked Rongyue Tianheng, "You also came for the divine sword? You have a girl you like?" Rongyue Tianheng's handsome face actually turned red and he nodded. Ji Xinyu was surprised. She smiled and said, "It's rare for a playboy like you to finally have a girl you like. Come, tell me, which family's daughter is she?" Rongyue Tianheng was once again bashful. "This is the third princess of the Nantian clan." The wine cup in Ji Xinyu's hand almost fell to the ground. "What?" Xie Fengliu's eyes also narrowed, and he quietly moved closer to Ji Xinyu. Ji Xinyu felt as if she had been struck by lightning. She couldn't help but ask, "Did you take the wrong medicine?" Weren't you afraid of being involved with her a while ago? You were so scared that you didn't dare to go home and drank outside? Why is she the one you like now? Rongyue Tianheng sighed and said, originally I believed the rumors and thought that she was. Actually, she is very good, very good. I fell in love with her at first sight during Sect Master Ziyun's banquet. I want to propose to her and give her a gift. If I can get this divine sword and give it to her, maybe she will be moved. Ji Xinyu, Xie Fenglu narrowed his eyes and smiled. Don't even think about it, my senior sister won't like you. Rongyue Tianheng was like an obedient little brother in front of Ji Xinyu, but he was still very arrogant to outsiders, so he glanced at Xie Fenglu and said coldly, how would you know if you don't try? Chapter 2884. Xie Fenglu swirled his wine cup. Of course I know my senior sister's personality. If I say she won't like you, then she won't like you. Isn't that right, Brother Shin? The last sentence was directed at Ji Xinyu. Ji Xinyu, on the other hand, felt that her junior brother was being a little overbearing today. She smiled and swirled her wine cup. Are you here today to discuss swords or women? That one sentence left everyone speechless. That young Master Huang raised his wine cup towards Ji Xinyu. Brother Shin and this humble one think alike. Come, let's toast you. The previous argument passed just like that. The four of them discussed the Jianghu anecdotes and the use of the female sword. Rongjuishan Huan couldn't help but ask, since there is a female sword, then shouldn't there be a male sword? If he obtained the male sword and went to ask for the female sword for his beloved, then it would be a marriage destined by the heavens. That young Master Huang knew a lot about the inside story. He shook his head. That might not be the case. The so-called female sword was not a name given to them because they were a pair. According to the people in the villa, that piece of meteoric iron is very suitable to make a female sword. The master swordsmith once wanted to make it into a normal sword, but he couldn't succeed, so that's how it is. Ji Xinyu was finally relieved. She did want to obtain this divine sword, but if the male sword fell into the hands of a man, then wouldn't she be unintentionally paired with that man? She didn't want that. Since it was a single sword, then it didn't matter. She was determined to obtain this sword. Just as she was thinking about this, Rongjuishan Huan suddenly patted her shoulder. Brother Shin, I'm not late. I booked a good room, why don't you sleep in my room tonight? We brothers haven't talked in a long time, we can chat. Before Ji Xinyu could say anything, Xie Fenglu exploded. Absolutely not. Brother Shin came with me, she can sleep in my room. My room is good, it's sunny. This young master's room is good, it's bigger than yours. Your room is too cramped. My room isn't cramped. It's more than enough for 2 big beds. If you don't believe me, ask Brother Huang. He's sharing a room with me now. Haha, there are already 2 people in your room and now you're asking Brother Shin to go over. Are you planning to squeeze in with the 3 of you, or are you trying to chase Brother Shin out? Young Marquis, you're being too unkind. Young Master Huang had a good temper. He looked at Xie Fenglu and smiled, trying to smooth things over. That doesn't matter. I can squeeze with Brother Xie. This young Marquis is indeed very loyal to Brother Shin. These past few days he has often been talking about how loyal Brother Shin is. Every time he opens his mouth, he would say, Brother Shin. It can be seen that their relationship is really good. Why don't we let the young Duke and young Master Shin share a room and get to know each other better? Xie Fenglio's handsome face darkened, and he slammed his wine glass on the table. Oh. Master Huang, Rongyue and Tianheng raised their eyebrows. Why not? Xie Fenglu opened his mouth, and just as he was about to come up with another reason, Ji Xinyu, who was at the side, lightly put down the wine cup and smiled. I am very touched by your enthusiasm, Tianheng. It's rare for you to have this kind of heart. I am very happy. However, you've known me for a long time, so you should know that I have a bad habit. No matter where I go, I like to sleep alone. I'm not used to sleeping with others. Chapter 2885. Since there are 2 big beds in Tianheng's room, there should be no problem for 3 people to sleep in. Fenglu, you can go and squeeze with them. Rongyu Shenheng, young Master Huang, Xie Fenglu. Rongyu Shenheng looked at Xie Fenglu with disdain. 2 people can sleep in my room, but 3 people is too crowded. Xie Fenglu also snorted. I won't sleep in the same bed as 2 stinky men. Brother Shin, let's share a room. Ji Xinyu frowned slightly. Rongyu Shenheng and that young Master Huang didn't know her background. It was fine if they made such a request, but why did Xie Fenglu want to join in the fun? There was something wrong with this kid recently. Just as they were arguing incessantly, the owner of the inn suddenly walked over and bowed towards Ji Xinyu. Is it young Master Xinyu? The entire hall suddenly became quiet. Everyone who came here knew that the owner of the inn was more arrogant than the sky. No matter who he saw, he would ignore them. Even if a prince or a prince came, he would ignore them. Even the waiters here were extremely arrogant and didn't know how to greet the guests. No matter who came, they would ask for a room according to the order and serve the food according to the order. They would never take the initiative to greet the guests. As for the owner of the inn, he was a mysterious figure who showed his face but not his tail. No matter how awesome the guests were, they would have to nod and greet him. However, he always ignored them. If he could even snort, it would be considered giving the other party face. Such a person actually came to talk to Ji Xinyue directly, and even bowed to greet her. This was even more shocking than seeing Mars colliding with Earth. Everyone in the hall opened their eyes wide and looked at the table. Xin Yu's reputation in the Fanning continent was very famous. Even if the people here hadn't seen him, they had heard of him. However, no matter how famous he was, he couldn't be more famous than the 4 emperors, right? When the 4 emperors came here to stay, the owner of the inn didn't even greet them. What was going on today? Did the sun rise from the south? Ji Xinyue suddenly became the focus of the hall. She was also a little surprised and nodded slightly. That's me. Is something the matter, shopkeeper Fong? Manager Fong smiled faintly and handed over a bunch of keys to her. Young Master Xin, someone has already booked the Sky Room number 1 for young Master Xin. This humble one has been waiting for young Master Xin for more than 10 days. Today the wait has finally come. Ji Xinyue, everyone's mouths formed an O shape. Everyone knew that the number 1 room in this inn was a legend, and it was never reserved for the public. It didn't matter how much money they offered or how early they came. Even if the 4 emperors came, they could only stay in the Sky Room number 2 at most. But now room 1 was open to the public. Furthermore, it had already been booked. Who was the person who booked the room? Can this inn make an exception? Ji Xinyue was also a little confused. She did not take the keys. Who booked the room? The innkeeper smiled again. This inn never divulges the information of our guests. Of course, the person who booked the room also said that if young Master Xin is unwilling, he won't force you. How could he not be willing? Although this kind of pie falling from the sky was most likely a trap, Ji Xinyue had always been bold, so she wasn't afraid of any traps. Besides, she really did need this room. The ivory bed was covered with soft shark silk and the bed curtain was light green like the color of the sky. Chapter 2886. The ivory bed was covered with soft shark silk, the bed canopy was light green like the color of the sky, the warm jade floor, the antique furniture made of unknown materials. These were the furnishings of the Sky Room 1. The room was very clean and the air was very fresh. Sitting in this kind of room was like sitting in nature. But everyone knew that this inn was built on the peak of a snowy mountain. The outside was covered with ice and every night the north wind would blow, snow would fill the sky, and a drop of water would turn into ice. If it wasn't so cold, everyone wouldn't have tried so hard to squeeze into the inn. They were willing to be slaughtered here. The furnishings of the other rooms in the inn were almost the same. Ordinary bed, ordinary furniture, ordinary floor. The only difference was the size and whether there was a window or not. But this Sky Room 1's furnishings were different from any other room. It was even more high-end than the palaces of the princes and princesses in the palace. Xie Fenglu had been wandering around the room, looking for possible mechanisms or something like that. However, after walking around for a full hour, he was ultimately disappointed. Other than the luxurious room, there really weren't any hidden traps. Ji Xinyue didn't have to worry about someone suddenly crawling out of nowhere. Go back, there's nothing strange about this room. Ji Xinyue was dizzy from his wandering and began to chase him away. Senior sister, I still feel that something is strange. Think about it, one who is unaccountably solicitous is hiding evil intentions. The person who booked the room didn't even dare to reveal his identity. There must be some shady conspiracy. I still feel that this room is not suitable. Why can't I? We can stay in any room. Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. I won't lose out. It's getting late, you should go back to your room and rest. Ji Xinyue yawned. She hadn't rested well these past few days, so she was indeed tired. Besides, she had secretly checked the room. There really wasn't anything strange. Even if there was something strange, she wasn't afraid. Xie Fenglu still wanted to say something, but Ji Xinyue was already impatient. She directly threw him out. Be good, go back to sleep. The door closed with a clang, directly shutting Xie Fenglu out. Xie Fenglu. He looked at the room door that could only be opened with a key and paused. He didn't believe that there wasn't something fishy going on. He didn't believe that there was such a person who didn't ask for anything in return and hid his identity to treat his senior sister well. There must be some conspiracy. He thought for a moment and sat down not far from the door. He wanted to stay here and see what was going on. If senior sister was in danger, he would be able to save her in time. This heaven room number 1 was on its own floor. Even if it was in the corridor, it was better than the one outside. However, it was obvious that Xie Fenglu was overthinking things. He had been standing guard here for an hour, but he did not hear anything from the room. That room was so luxurious and the soundproofing was excellent. Even if there was any movement inside, it probably wouldn't be heard, right? Xie Fenglu was worried again. He was about to knock on the door when light footsteps came from the stairs. His heart stirred and his figure flashed. He hid in a shadow and looked outside. Sure enough, 2 people walked up the stairs. However, Xie Fenglu was a little surprised to see them. It was Yu Shuashang and Lu Hui Immortal Monarch. Even in the cold weather, Lu Hui Immortal Monarch was still waving a folding fan, carefully fanning away the dust on Yu Shuashang's dress. Chapter 2887. Lu Hui deity was still waving his fan in the cold weather, carefully fanning the dust off Yu Shuashang's dress. Shuashang, don't worry. It's fine if this room isn't open to the public, but since it's open to the public, I'll definitely get this room for you. You're the only one in this world who deserves to live in a room like this. Yu Shuashang was indeed worthy of being called the Ice Snow Fairy. Her beautiful face was still cold as she nodded slightly and finally opened her mouth, but it was only 2 words. Thank you. Xie Fenglu raised his eyebrows high, crossed his arms and looked at her coldly. Although he felt that his senior sister's room was not very reliable, and he wanted nothing more than to persuade his senior sister to move into his room, it did not mean that he felt that his senior sister did not deserve to live in this room. If there was a woman in this world who was suitable to live in this room, it would only be his senior sister. As for the others, this fairy Shuashang was not even worthy of carrying his senior sister's shoes. Lu Hui deity was probably really mesmerized by her beauty, as he directly knocked on Ji Xinyue's door. Ji Xinyue had also checked the entire room and did not find anything wrong. She even found a very magical place. The spiritual energy in this room was much more abundant than outside. It was very nourishing. She had been running around for the past few days and was actually very tired, but after staying in there for less than 2 hours, she felt much more relaxed. It was even better than sitting for 2 hours. She naturally would not let go of such an opportunity. She wanted to have a good night's rest so that it would be convenient for her to go to the Sword Mountain Manor tomorrow. She had just meditated for less than a quarter of an hour when there was a knock on the door. She frowned. Who is it? Lu Hui deity immediately said, Deity Shin, it's me, Lu Hui deity. Please open the door. This immortal monarch has something to discuss with divine monarch. Why was this prodigal deity looking for her? Ji Xinyue was still a little puzzled. She knew that this deity had a very clingy habit. If she did not talk to him, he would probably keep harassing her outside the door. Ji Xinyue opened the door and leaned against the door frame, looking at the 2 people in front of her. What's the matter? Although she left the door open, there was a screen painted with mountains and rivers. Therefore, although the 2 of them took the opportunity to look inside, they couldn't see what was inside. He only felt that this screen was very quaint and valuable, and the air in the room was extraordinarily fresh. Yu Shuashang's eyes lit up. Her eyes were filled with envy as she looked at the room. Lu Hui Immortal Monarch also took the opportunity to explain the purpose of her visit. Xinyu, who was disguised by Ji Xinyue, was one of the top figures in the Fanning continent. Therefore, Le Club Immortal Monarch didn't dare to be rash and spoke tactfully. They simply said that the snow-clad fairy was not very comfortable staying in the Sky Room number 2. They had originally wanted to book the Sky Room number 1, but they did not expect that it had already been booked by someone else. They had been waiting for the original owner to come, and only today did a guest arrive, so they wanted to switch rooms with Ji Xinyu. They also said that they were all men, so it did not matter which room they stayed in. They should take care of the woman and make her stay more comfortable. A woman like Yu Shuashang should live in the best place. Of course, what Lu Hui Immortal Monarch lacked the least was money. He proposed to give Ji Xinyue double the room price. His words seemed to praise Yu Shuashang to the heavens, as if Ji Xinyue did not agree to the exchange, she would not have any tender feelings for the fairer sex and would be unforgivable. Chapter 2888. Lu Hui Immortal Master finished his long speech and waited for Ji Xinyue's reply. Yu Shuashang also looked at Ji Xinyue and said, Immortal Master Shin, it's not that Shuashang is delicate, it's just that Shuashang hasn't been feeling well these past few days, and the bed in Shuashang's room is a bit hard, making Shuashang even more uncomfortable. That's why Shuashang wants to change rooms. I'm sure Immortal Master won't reject Shuashang's small request, right? She was indeed beautiful, especially when she was begging so pitifully. Most men would agree to her request when they saw her expression. Ji Xinyue crossed her arms and raised her eyebrows. Is this what you two came here to talk about? Both of them nodded. Ji Xinyue said indifferently, if you're done, go wash up and sleep. Forgive me for not keeping you company. She turned around and entered the room, closing the door without hesitation. Luhui Immortal Master. His nose almost hit the door and he stared at the door with his mouth agape. It was also the first time Yu Shuashang was rejected like this. She was stunned for a moment and after a while her snow-white face flushed red. With her beauty she was practically invincible among men. Almost all of them flocked to her and obeyed her every word. She thought that changing rooms would be a piece of cake, but she didn't expect. Luhui Immortal Master didn't give up and shouted outside, increasing the price by 3 times, 4 times, all the way to 10 times. He didn't get a response from Ji Xinyue, so he made up his mind and was about to knock on the door again. A shadow flashed and directly attacked Luhui Immortal Master's wrist. Luhui Immortal Master was shocked and retracted his hand, looking back in the direction of the shadow. He saw Xie Fenglu leaning against the wall, twirling a small knife in his hand and looking at them with a faint smile. If you dare to make a fuss here again, the knife in my hand will slit your throat, do you believe me? Luhui Immortal Master. Yu Shuashang's pretty face turned green and white. Although Luhui Immortal Master was a rich immortal master, his martial arts were just average. If he really fought with Xie Fenglu, he had no chance of winning. Although Yu Shuashang had a good reputation on the continent, her kung fu was only slightly better than most women. At most, she was slightly better than Luhui Deity. If she really fought with Xie Fenglu, she had no chance of winning. She didn't expect that there would be 2 men who didn't treat her like a pot of vinegar today. Although she felt indignant, there was nothing she could do. She bitterly pursed her lips and pretended to be magnanimous. Forget it. Since Divine Lord Shin is unwilling, then there's no need to force it. She turned around and walked down the stairs. Luhui Immortal Monarch also glared at Xie Fenglu, then turned around and left. Ji Xinyue also thought that something was going to happen tonight, but after a night had passed, when she woke up, the room was still quiet and nothing had happened. Of course, the person who booked the room for her never showed up. Recently, she had been risking her life a little more. After getting injured a few times, she had not fully recovered and had been busy with other things. Therefore, her skills had always been in a half-assed state. But after sleeping here for a night, she actually felt refreshed as if she had meditated for a year. Almost all of his power had been restored. Not only was there no trap in this room, but it was also a rare paradise. More importantly, Ji Xinyue searched the room again and again, but she couldn't find where the abundant spiritual qi in the room came from. It was very easy for her to freshen up now. A cleansing spell could solve the problem. Chapter 2889. She woke up very early and was shocked when she opened the door. Xie Fenglu was sitting by the door, leaning against it and sleeping. When she opened the door, this guy fell in. Fortunately, this guy immediately woke up and jumped up. He rubbed his eyes and looked at Ji Xinyue from head to toe. Are you okay? This guy probably didn't sleep well. His hair was messy and he looked like he had just woken up. Ji Xinyue looked at him in surprise. You've been sleeping here? Xie Fenglu's baby face blushed slightly, but his eyes rippled as he looked at Ji Xinyue. He nodded heavily. Yes. She must know that he chose to stay here because he was worried about her. She must be touched. Ji Xinyue looked at the long carpet in the corridor and then looked at him. She suddenly understood. Your room is so bad it's not as comfortable as this corridor? Xie Fenglu was speechless. Someone laughed. Xie Fenglu turned around angrily and saw that young Master Huang was standing there, smiling at him. Ji Xinyue knew that this young Master Huang had a very poetic name, Huang Qinglu. This person was unknown in the Fanning continent and Ji Xinyue had never heard of his name. This person looked gentle and elegant and was very low-key. There didn't seem to be anything special about him. But Ji Xinyue knew that this person was extraordinary. The men who could come to this snowy mountain were not bad at martial arts. Even most of the women were very famous in the Jianghu. Otherwise, they wouldn't have the confidence to get the divine sword. Which one of the men who stayed in this inn wasn't a famous character? But this Huang Qinglu seemed to have popped out of the ground. He didn't have a name, but he easily came here. Ji Xinyu could be considered to have a good eye for people. Normally, when a person passed by her, she would be able to roughly guess how deep their martial arts were. But she couldn't see through Huang Qinglu, she couldn't even tell if he had martial arts. This kind of person either didn't have any martial arts or was unfathomable. Ji Xinyu felt that the latter was more likely. After all, they had drunk together before. Ji Xinyu nodded at him and went downstairs. "What are you laughing at?" Xie Fenglu looked at Huang Qinglu coldly. Huang Qinglu raised his eyebrows and his eyes flashed with interest. "I can't laugh? Do you want me to cry when I see this scene?" Xie Fenglu glanced at him again and said in an even colder voice, "Don't even think about hitting on her. She's my bottom line." Huang Qinglu leaned against the wall. There was still a smile on his handsome face, but his eyes were faintly cold. "Do you really like her?" Xie Fenglu lifted his foot and walked down, leaving behind a sentence, "You're meddling too much. Whether I like her or not has nothing to do with you. Also, don't show up in places where you shouldn't be." In the blink of an eye he went downstairs as well. Huang Qingliu's slender white jade-like hand twirled the bamboo flute, looking at his back thoughtfully. Today was the day the immortal sword chose its master. The innkeeper brought everyone to the foot of the mountain. The peak was tens of thousands of feet high, covered by clouds and fog, making it impossible to see the peak. Although it was called a mountain, it was actually an ice mountain. The entire mountain seemed to have been polished out of ice and snow. The ice wall was so bright that it could be used as a mirror. The innkeeper cast a spell with his fingertips. A moment later he pointed upwards. A muffled sound came from the peak of the mountain. The clouds above slowly dispersed, turning into white cloud-like stairs that hung straight down. The innkeeper gestured to the crowd. "Everyone please." Chapter 2890. Just as everyone was about to rush forward, the innkeeper said, "Because it's a female sword this time, the master selection is slightly different from the previous years, and it's also a bit more difficult. These white cloud steps are the first checkpoint. The white cloud steps look soft but they're actually hard. Only those who can sense the divine sword's summoning will be able to step on these steps. Those who can't sense it will step on air and fall down. Those who fall down are not fated with the divine sword and can directly leave the mountain." Everyone agreed, their hearts filled with apprehension. Originally, regardless of whether they were fated with the divine sword or not, they could enter the hidden sword villa to see the divine sword's glory. This time they were actually allowed to sense the divine sword summoning first. This time it was a female sword, so the one who could sense it should be a woman, right? Could a man sense it? Xie Fenglu stood close to Ji Xinyu and sent a sound transmission to her. "Senior sister, do you want to restore your original body to pass this stage? What if the divine sword really only summons women and is confused by your body's illusion?" Ji Xinyu rubbed the space between her eyebrows and replied indifferently, "If the divine sword can't even distinguish this, then how can it be called a divine sword? I don't want it even if it's given to me for free." Just as she said this, her heart suddenly tightened, as if some invisible sharp aura had directly crashed into her heart and stabbed her. Could this be the divine sword's aura? Did her words cause the divine sword to be dissatisfied? Who cares? She'll go up first. Looking up, she could already faintly see the cornice of the hidden sword villa's pavilion. Looking down, she often saw the people around her falling like dumplings. There were more than 300 people who came to try their luck, but now less than 100 people had fallen. The white cloud steps looked as soft as a bun, but when one really stepped on it, it was, as the innkeeper said, incomparably hard. Not only was it hard, it was also hot. Ji Xinyu felt as if she was stepping on a pair of fire tongs. Fortunately, she left as soon as she touched it. Before the heat could reach her feet, she had already leaped up again. She could still feel that sharp aura, and it was getting stronger and stronger. It seemed that this divine sword didn't discriminate between men and women. Most of the survivors were men. Of course, there were also many women. These women's martial arts might not be very strong, but their cloud manipulation technique was not bad. In addition, they had men by their side to take care of them. As long as they were fated, they did not fall. The stairs were indeed magical. Ji Xinyu saw with her own eyes that the tips of many people's feet had clearly stepped on the stairs, but it was as if they had stepped into the void. Their bodies swayed and they directly fell down. Perhaps the divine sword also wanted to measure these people's various kung fu. Some people had clearly climbed up the first few dozen steps, but suddenly missed a step at the back. Because there was a barrier around the mountain, if one wanted to go up the mountain they had to step on these stairs. They couldn't directly fly up, so no one could take advantage of the situation. Ji Xinyu's first few hundred steps were steady, but after a few dozen steps, the steps seemed to be playing a joke on her. When she stepped on them, she suddenly couldn't feel the calling in her heart, and the solid steps under her feet suddenly softened. Her body swayed violently, and just when she thought she was about to fall, she felt the calling again, and the steps returned to normal. Xie Fenglu, who was beside her, walked steadily. When Ji Xinyu swayed, he had to reach out to support her. But before she could touch Ji Xinyu's body, she steadied herself again. Chapter 2891. What's wrong? Xie Fenglu was a little puzzled. Ji Xinyu secretly gritted her teeth. Nothing. The divine sword was probably taking revenge on her. It was a divine sword with a temper. As long as she could go up, she had to get it. Ji Xinyu's eyes flashed. Ji Xinyu's martial arts was the highest among these people, and her cloud manipulation technique was also the best. Although she had been tricked by the stairs several times, she was still the one at the top. The last step was right above her, and victory was right in front of her. She took a deep breath, and her body floated up again. The tip of her foot touched the stairs, and as long as she stepped on it, her body would slide down to the platform, and she would successfully reach the top. But she didn't expect that the moment her foot touched the stairs, the sensing force would suddenly disappear, and the stairs would suddenly disperse like clouds. She stepped directly into the void, and after swaying for a moment, she fell down. The wind whistled in her ears and her body fell down involuntarily. When she fell, she faintly heard a shout, "Senior sister." Needless to say, that shout was Xie Fengliu's. However, because there were always people falling from above, the volume of their cries was also different. In addition, everyone was frightened and all their attention was on the stairs and the people around them, so no one noticed Xie Fengliu's shout. Ji Xinyu knew that there was a special barrier here and she couldn't use the normal method to fly on the clouds, so she could only wait for the path of falling to the ground. It seemed that she really had no fate with that divine sword. So be it, if it didn't belong to her, she wouldn't think about it. Ji Xinyu had already adjusted her state of mind during the process of falling. Of course, she also adjusted her body. Even if she fell, she didn't want to fall flat on her face and lose too badly. Just as she was about to fall to the ground, the stairs that had disappeared suddenly reappeared, and her feet landed on it. Ji Xinyu stood at the bottom of the stairs, a little stunned. What was this? Was she eliminated or not? The others who fell all fell to the bottom and were eliminated cleanly. After all, they were all experts. Even if they fell from a high place, they did not fall too badly. Most of them were still able to stand and land on their feet. Because the people were still descending, everyone wanted to see how many people had successfully reached the top. Therefore, most people did not leave after landing. After landing, they joined the spectators below in dejection, looking up to see others flying in the air. Ji Xinyu's abnormality naturally fell into the eyes of the spectators below, and everyone was a little confused. Was this even possible? Some of the people who were unwilling to give up after landing on the ground had a thought and also jumped down the stairs. But as soon as his feet touched the ground, the stairs disappeared under his feet and he rolled down the stairs again. However, this time they were not as lucky as the first time. This time they fell hard on the ground. After a few people tried it, they all fell flat on their backs. They couldn't be more embarrassed. Obviously, this staircase did not allow anyone to have a second chance. Ji Xinyu frowned as she stood on the steps. At this moment, she could already feel the strong calling, but she raised her head and looked up, not planning to go up again. If all of this was the work of that divine sword, then that sword was simply too petty. She only said a few bad things about it, and it used this method to torment her. Very well, she didn't want it anymore. Chapter 2892. She could rely on her broadsword to make a name for herself on this continent, so why should she be so obsessed with a sword? Although Ji Xinyu was competitive, she was not obsessed with things, perhaps because she was used to being abandoned when she was young. According to her, she would also abandon the things that abandoned her. No matter if it was people or things, she jumped up and instead of flying up, she directly jumped down. Everyone stared at her in disbelief, unable to believe that she would give up this second chance that was hard to come by. This flight of stairs was a few hundred feet from the ground. She could reach the ground in the blink of an eye, and before everyone could exclaim and sigh, Ji Xinyu had already landed. Just as she was about to land, a white light suddenly flashed under her feet. Suddenly, a huge cloud appeared out of thin air. Ji Xinyu's body landed on this cloud. Not only did this cloud cover her body, it also had the function of a spring bed. Just as Ji Xinyu's feet landed on the cloud, a huge rebounding force suddenly appeared under her feet, and her body involuntarily rose into the air. Everyone's mouths were wide open as they watched her shoot up into the sky like a cannonball, disappearing in the blink of an eye. What kind of state was this? What was that huge cloud? The cloud was still there, and some curious people couldn't help but jump up and land on the cloud, wanting to take a look and see what was so strange about it. Anyway, the cloud wasn't high, so they could go up without flying. The cloud was no different from a normal cloud, it was surrounded by clouds and was illusory. They couldn't borrow any force from the cloud, so they directly fell back down. The cloud dissipated quickly, and the mountain returned to its original cloudy state. Even the stairs disappeared. There were more than 300 people and more than 240 people fell. In this round, 4/5 of them were eliminated, and less than 1/5 passed. This result was within everyone's expectations. After all, there was only one divine sword and there were so many people who wanted it. Everyone was actually very envious of Xinyu. He had fallen and joined the eliminated group, but he was bounced back up by a cloud. He was so lucky. The Jade Pavilion was made of jade and jade. In a large hall made of countless ice blocks, there were already more than 10 tables set up. The banquet was sumptuous with all kinds of delicacies. There was a group of dancers dancing in the middle of the hall. The dance performed by the female dancers was also different from a normal dance. They were performing a sword dance. The cold light came and went, and her figure was as nimble as a willow. It was quite interesting. The tables in the hall were already filled with people. There were 4 people per table, so there were exactly 12 tables. The lucky Ji Xinyu was sitting in front of one of the tables, twirling a wine cup in her hand as she looked at the dancing girls and sighed at the impermanence of life. Like a rocket, she was shot up by the strange cloud and landed directly on the high platform of the mountain peak. At that time, there were already 4 or 5 people on the high platform, including Xie Fenglu, Rongyue Tianheng, and of course Huang Qinglu. Xie Fenglu looked impatient as if he was about to do something. Huang Qinglu was standing in front of him and talking to him. She was obviously trying to stop him. When Ji Xinyu landed, she heard his last words. Rather than jumping down to accompany her, why don't you fight for the divine sword for her? Rongyue Tianheng's eyes were sharp. Before Ji Xinyu landed on the ground, he rushed over with a shout of joy. Brother Shen. Chapter 2893. He probably liked it too much as he directly opened his arms towards Ji Xinyu, wanting to give her a big hug. He ran too quickly and was not on guard against Ji Xinyu, who had just rushed up. Thus he was knocked down and slipped. As if he was skating, he rushed down the platform and bumped into another man who had just climbed up. Then he rolled down the platform like a gourd along with that man. The two of them rolled down the platform together. Ah, save me. Damn it. Ah. Below the platform, the two people's cries and curses could be heard. In the blink of an eye, they were far away. Ji Xinyu. She stood on the high platform and looked down. She watched as the two figures disappeared into the clouds and mist, disappearing without a trace. She rubbed her hands guiltily. She really did not do it on purpose. Xie Fenglu was naturally overjoyed when he saw her jump up safely. He immediately rushed over. Brother Shen. Ji Xinyu hurriedly grabbed him. Don't fall. She directly pulled him to a safe place so that he would not have the same fate as Rongyue Tianheng. Brother Shen, how did you come up again? Did you bump into anything? Are you hurt? Xie Fenglu asked a bunch of questions the moment he opened his mouth. Ji Xinyu was also a little confused at that time, so she just shook her head. Don't worry, I'm not hurt. When she looked up, she saw Huang Qinglu standing there, his eyes flashing. The two of them looked at each other and Huang Qinglu smiled. Congratulations, Brother Shen. His smile was bright and clear, but Ji Xinyu didn't know why, but she felt a series of alarms in her heart. She was always on guard against this person, so she nodded at him and said, Many thanks and congratulations to Brother Huang for passing. Without Rongyue Tianheng, the original 4-person group became a 3-person group. Xie Fenglu was very pleased with Rongyue Tianheng's fall. Ji Xinyu was a little worried. After all, she was the one who knocked him down. She did not know if he was hurt. Fortunately, after a while, the voice transmission talisman on Ji Xinyue's waist rang. Ji Xinyu picked it up, and Rongyue Tianheng's angry voice came from the talisman. Brother Shen, you must get that divine sword. I fell down so unjustly. There was another person beside him who shouted angrily, Unjustly? I'm even more wronged. I finally managed to rush up, but you smashed me down. You unlucky bastard, compensate me. Compensate your ass. Young master didn't hit you on purpose. Compensate you, right? I'll compensate you with a few punches. Then the sound of fighting came from the other side. Ji Xinyue. Hearing Rongyue Tianhuan's voice, she knew that he wasn't injured and was finally relieved. Rongjui Shenheng's kung fu was not weak, and the people who were unlucky enough to be hit by him were obviously not his opponent. After a while the fighting over there stopped. Rongjui Shenhuan seemed to have finally vented his anger, and his voice became much calmer. Brother Shen, I will be waiting for you at the foot of the mountain. I must get that divine sword. Ji Shenyu rubbed her forehead and replied, I'll do my best. Only then did Rongjui Shenheng close the voice transmission talisman in satisfaction. Ji Shenyu's intuition told her that the divine sword seemed to hold a grudge against her. She had not forgotten the torment from before. Although a big cloud appeared and bounced her up, it didn't seem to have given up on her. But who knew if that sword felt that it hadn't played enough and was playing tricks with her? Maybe that sword liked to make people's moods rise and fall. It would give her a few benefits first and then give her a ruthless blow at the end. Chapter 2894. Perhaps that fellow liked to make people's moods rise and fall. He would first give her a few benefits and then give her a ruthless move at the end. She had to be on guard against all of this. Ji Shinyu knew that the more mysterious something was, the more intelligent it was. Furthermore, like humans, they all had their own strange tempers. This divine sword should be the same. Before she even saw its true appearance, it wanted to give her a show of strength. Ji Shinyu secretly clenched her fists. She did not believe that a dignified living person like her would be tricked by a sword. This year's Godly Sword Master Selection Assembly was really different from the previous years. In the past, Hidden Sword Villa did not provide meals. These people came directly to the Godly Sword to compete with their swordsmanship. The winner just had to go up and pull out the Godly Sword. The one who could pull out the Godly Sword would be its master. These heroes were chased down the mountain before they could even see the servants of Hidden Sword Villa. Therefore, although some of the people who came had been here 3 or 4 times, they were still confused about the layout of Hidden Sword Villa. This time it was probably because the real divine sword was being forged, so Hidden Sword Villa made it so grand. Food was actually provided. Not only was food provided, there was also singing and dancing to liven things up. Even the mountain master of Hidden Sword Villa brought a few of his most capable swordsmiths to appear for the first time and celebrate with everyone. This was the first time most of the people had seen the master of Hidden Sword Villa. Everyone was very excited. Although there was only one divine sword, it was a good experience to be able to get to know the people of Hidden Sword Villa. Furthermore, the dishes at the banquet were basically made from the local specialties of the mountain. There were many meat and vegetables that no one knew what they were. However, the taste was still very good, allowing everyone to eat to their heart's content. At the banquet, the Villa Master of Hidden Sword Villa explained the rules of the divine sword's choice of master. This time, the divine sword was a female sword, and this sword had a lot of personality. It was not the old rules of Hidden Sword Villa to choose its master, but it wanted to choose itself. It was a divine sword, so naturally, it had to choose the most outstanding woman in the world. As for who was the most outstanding woman, it was up to everyone to decide. That step was only the first test. It proved that the people who came here had some fate with the divine sword. It was the most suitable for these people to choose the most outstanding woman. Therefore, the second test was for everyone to say the advantages of the chosen woman and the reason why she should obtain the divine sword. Of course, due to time constraints, everyone couldn't make a long speech. It was best to summarize it in one sentence. This situation was a bit like a beauty pageant. When the Villa Master said this rule, the corner of Ji Shenyu's mouth twitched. As for the others, they looked a little confused and looked at each other a few times. There were a total of 13 women present, and each of them was a famous character. Each of them had their own merits. Spring flowers and autumn moon each had their own beauty. They didn't come by themselves. They were accompanied by their husbands. Even if they weren't accompanied by their husbands, they were surrounded by all kinds of men. Among them, the most outstanding was still Yu Shuashan. It would have been fine if she hadn't appeared, but once she did, her icy cold temperament and picturesque features made her stand out like a crane among chickens. Her temperament was the most outstanding, and her appearance was also the most outstanding. As for her kung fu, it should be extremely outstanding as well. It was said that she had challenged many famous experts in the martial arts world, and those experts had all been defeated by her sword. Therefore, when the Hidden Sword Villa's Villa Master said the words "the most outstanding woman," many men present had already turned to look at her. Chapter 2895. There were a total of 47 people who passed the test this time. In addition to Ji Xinyu there were 33 men. Of these 33 men, 5 were here to fight for the sword for Yushua Shang, and all of them were experts. Although the others were guarding their lovers or wives, they often stole glances at Yushua Shang, which made the people around them very unhappy. The atmosphere at the banquet was a little strange. The most outstanding woman is naturally Fairy Shuashang. She's beautiful and skilled. Yes, Fairy Shuashang is the most beautiful woman in the Fanning continent. This is acknowledged by everyone. If we were to talk about the 3 most outstanding characters, it would be Snow Fairy. For a while those who admired Yu Shuashang almost praised her to the heavens. As for the other men, some also praised their lovers and wives, such as kind and chivalrous, cute and innocent. But these praises were far less than those who praised Yu Shuashang. After less than an hour of debate, Yu Shuashang took the biggest limelight. Most people had a herd mentality. When there were too many people praising, even if others didn't like the person who was praised at first, they would have a good impression of that woman under the tide of praise. Although some men were still speaking for their wives or lovers, their attention had already turned to Yu Shuashang. Yu Shuashang became the focus of attention. It was unknown how many men's eyes were on her. Yu Shuashang sat there. Although her pretty face still had the same cold expression, the corners of her lips were faintly showing a complacent smile. When it was her turn, she stood up lightly and said only one sentence. I believe that if the divine sword has good eyesight, it will definitely choose Shuashang. This sentence was full of arrogance, which was her style. Although the other women were not convinced, they couldn't change the situation for the time being. Besides, in terms of appearance, the women present were indeed a little inferior to Yu Shuashang. Of course, since these women could sense the call of the divine sword and come here, none of them were ordinary people. They were usually proud and arrogant, so naturally they were not convinced by Yu Shuashang. When it was the turn of the women to speak, after she said her advantages, she would naturally belittle the vase intentionally or unintentionally, saying that the divine sword should choose a master who was really strong and outstanding inside, and not be obsessed with appearance. Of course, these women had different personalities, so their words were naturally different, but the general meaning was about the same. It was just that one could not judge a person by their appearance. Especially those who looked much worse than Yu Shuashang, their words were even sharper. For a moment, the banquet was filled with the smell of gunpowder. When everyone entered the hall, they were not seated according to their status. They were all seated freely. As for Ji Xinyu, she liked to be quiet, so the table she was sitting at was a little remote, and she was also the last table to speak. There were only 3 people at her table, her, Xie Fenglu and Huang Qinglu. The 3 of them all had outstanding appearances, so even though they were sitting in the corner, many people were paying attention to their table. This was especially true for the women, who glanced over from time to time. Everyone was guessing who these 3 people would fight for this divine sword. When the host asked about this table, Xie Fenglu was the first to speak. If we're talking about the most outstanding woman in the world, who can compare to my senior sister? Chapter 2896. Xie Fenglu was the first to speak. In terms of the most outstanding woman in the world, which one can compare to my senior sister? I'm only fighting for her. It's said that swords are given to famous scholars, and rouge is given to beautiful women. My senior sister is both a famous scholar and a beautiful woman. Whether it's her appearance or martial arts, which woman here can compare to her? When he said this, half of the hall fell silent. Princess Ji Xinyu's name could be said to have resounded through half the world. Originally it was extremely dark, but now it was about to be cleared. However, after all, she had been slandered for so many years. Although many things had proven that she was wronged, there were still some deep-rooted impressions in people's hearts. Therefore, the outside world's evaluation of her could be said to be half praise, and half praise. Although there were many people who had attended the birthday banquet of the Purple Cloud sect a while ago, those people were basically invited by the Purple Cloud sect. The Purple Cloud sect's invitation was very casual. He would send the invitation to whoever he liked. He did not care about the person's status, martial arts, or reputation. Especially those famous people who were too far away from the Purple Cloud sect. The Purple Cloud sect's sect master was too lazy to let his disciples send the invitation. Therefore, although the status of the people present was a big shot, and they were all very famous in the Fanning continent, there were not many who actually received an invitation from the Purple Cloud sect's sect master. Among the more than 40 people present, only 4 or 5 people had attended the Purple Cloud sect's sect master's birthday banquet and had seen Ji Xinyu's true appearance. However, the rumor that she was a great beauty had already spread throughout the Fanning continent. Therefore, when Xie Fenglu said this, the entire hall fell silent, and then there was a buzz of discussion. The host then turned to ask Ji Xinyu, who was spinning her wine cup, "Who is young Master Xin choosing the sword for?" Ji Xinyu only said 3 words, "Ji Xinyu." Xinyu, who had never been charmed by any woman, actually chose the princess. The host could not help but ask, "Young Master Xin, can you tell us the reason for choosing her?" Everyone also pricked up their ears, wanting to hear her say 1, 2, 3. Ji Xinyu smiled faintly and put down her wine cup. "There's no reason I'll choose her." Did she need a reason to choose her? Everyone. Among these people, Xinyu's reputation was extremely resounding. 1 sentence from him was more effective than 10 sentences from other men who didn't have high status. Even Sir God Xinyu, who didn't get close to women, had his eyes on a woman. She was definitely not ordinary. Xie Fenglu and Ji Xinyu's choice was like throwing a huge rock into a lake, causing ripples. The buzzing in the hall grew louder. There were 3 women whose martial arts and looks were no match for Yu Shuashang's. They knew that they had no chance, but they couldn't bear to see Yu Shuashang win, so they also began to speak up for Ji Xinyue. "That's right, Princess Ji Xinyue's beauty is top-notch, her dance moves the world. What's even rarer is that his martial arts are good and he's also a divine lord." "That's right. I heard that even divine monarch Changbu Bai wasn't her match. She defeated him single-handedly in a few moves and he almost learned to crawl like a dog. Just based on this skill, it's much better than a certain embroidered pillow who thinks he's number 1. I think so too. Princess Ji Xinyue is the number 1 woman in the Fanning continent. As for the others, they're just names." The 3 women's words had a hidden meaning. Anyone who wasn't stupid would know who they were belittling. Yu Shuashang had been as indifferent as ice when she was being praised, maintaining her poise extremely well. However, after hearing these women's words, her pretty face clearly darkened. Chapter 2897. Her beautiful face clearly sank, and after the 3 women finished speaking, she suddenly laughed lightly. "Princess Ji Xinyue is indeed not bad. Shuashang is 1,300 years old this year, and this senior's name is like thunder to my ears. It can be said that I grew up listening to her deeds. I heard that this senior had been wronged in the past few years. The so-called jinx, the rumors of her being ugly were all false." Shuashang felt very indignant for her. She felt that it was very difficult for a woman to live such a life. Since Princess Ji Xinyue was so outstanding, she naturally didn't have to worry about marriage. As long as exalted immortal Rongyu saw her, she would definitely want to marry her. The 2 of them could be harmonious and create a beautiful story. But I didn't expect exalted immortal Rongyu to choose to cancel the engagement even though she saw her true face at the banquet. This was very puzzling. I wonder if anyone knows the reason behind this? Her words seemed to be very pertinent and innocent, but there was a hidden sharpness in her words. Ji Xinyue casually poured herself a cup of wine. Hearing her words, she smiled. So this was the number 1 ice beauty of Sanning continent. When it came to gossip, she was no less than those gossipy women. Yu Shuashang's words naturally caused the men who had been supporting her to agree. The Hui Immortal Master was the most courageous. That's right, Shuashang is right. The price to pay for canceling an engagement is so great and there is so much danger. If a normal man was engaged, he would rather make do with his life than go down the path of canceling an engagement. But exalted immortal Rongyu chose to cancel the engagement. What does this mean? I don't need to say it. Everyone should understand, right? The other men who had been supporting Yu Shuashang laughed. They all had a tacit mutual understanding. Ji Xinyue was disgusted by his, ha. This typical rich second-generation immortal master was so tasteless. She raised her hand to stop Xie Fenglu, who was about to explode. She tapped her finger on the table. Just as she was about to speak, she heard a cold voice in the air. What does it mean? Why don't you explain it in detail? This voice was magnetic and clear, with a touch of bone-chilling coldness. It was like a stream of ice that had just melted and flowed past everyone's ears. Ji Xinyue's fingers paused. She almost knocked over the wine cup in front of her. Rongyu Tianlan. It was Rongyu Tianlan's voice. Why is he here? Although Rongyu Tianlan's name was not generally well known, there were not many people present who had really seen him. Le Hui Immortal Monarch had never seen him before and had never heard his voice before. Naturally, he did not know who he was. He looked around and did not see the person who spoke. He raised his head and asked, "Who is it? Who's talking?" Me. Another short word sounded in the air. Following this, a faint azure light flashed in the air and a person appeared. He was dressed in a light green loose robe, and his long black hair was loosely tied up with a blue ribbon. It was obviously an extremely ordinary attire, but when he wore it he gave off the feeling of an immortal. Slanted eyebrows, shimmering and mysterious eyes, a tall nose and beautifully curved lips. His facial features might not be the most outstanding, but when put together they gave people a feeling of extreme perfection. Especially when he looked at people with a smile that was not a smile, there was an indescribable sense of unrestrained elegance. There was even a hint of faintly discernible evil. He stood there in a half-cloud, half-mist. His posture was casual and his bearing was graceful, but there was a kind of pressure on his body. Almost everyone present held their breaths. Chapter 2898. Rongyue Tianlan dressed very casually. He didn't have any specific attire. When he first became famous he liked to wear white as he felt that it was flashy and handsome enough. In addition he was extremely handsome, so he got the title of White God. Many women's hearts would beat faster when they heard these 4 words. Because of this, some new gods wanted to learn from him, causing white clothes to become the wind. It was almost a disaster. Often, at a gathering, all that could be seen were young talents in white. It was a vast expanse of white, and it was very difficult to distinguish them. This made Rongyue Tianlan, who was somewhat maverick at that time, very depressed. Not long after his clothes clashed, he stopped wearing white. He even felt annoyed when he saw white clothes. So when he met Xinjiuli in Tianxi continent and saw Xinjiuli in white sleeping on the bed, his first reaction wasn't to save him, but to steal the big bed. Later on, Rongyue Tianlan only paid attention to taste and didn't pay attention to color. No matter what color the robe was, as long as it showed elegance, he wouldn't refuse it. Of course, most of the time he wore blue, dark blue, sea blue. He had worn all kinds of blue. The reason why he preferred this color was that there weren't many colors for men to choose from. Basically, they were mainly blue, black, and white. He hated white, and black was too dull and serious, which didn't suit his character. Blue, on the other hand, was still very elegant and elegant. More importantly, this color was resistant to dirt, unlike white, which would be like wearing a rag if it was slightly dirty. As for red, he felt that the color was too flashy and too evil. It didn't suit his style. This time, Rongyue Tianlan appeared wearing a light green wide robe. The corners of the robe were hooked with dark cloud patterns. A thin plum blossom was slanting out of the sleeve, swaying with the wind. It was as if there was a plum blossom fragrance coming from his body. There was a faint coldness in the elegance. His appearance and bearing were undoubtedly the most outstanding. His robe fluttered down and he landed right in front of the stage. A person like him was a beautiful sight no matter where he stood. He could make all the people or things around him become his foil. Behind him, there were still beautiful dancers who hadn't left the stage. Those dancers were originally very outstanding and eye-catching. But under his reflection, each and every one of them was like a dim star, no longer unique. What a show-off. Ji Xinyu sighed in her heart. She knew that Rongyue Tianlan had always been showy and did not keep a low profile, but today she seemed to be 10 times more showy than usual. Especially the robe he was wearing. It was obviously a low-key color, but when he wore it, it shone brightly. It was almost impossible to shift one's eyes away from it. Everyone in the hall looked at him. The sword manor master and his swordsmiths had already stood up. Exalted immortal Rongyu, I didn't expect you to come today. Please have a seat. The villa master of the hidden sword manor, who had always been arrogant and did not respect anyone, greeted Rongyue Tian warmly. His demeanor could even be said to be respectful. Everyone, Ji Xinyu swirled the wine cup in her hand as she pondered. From the looks of it, Rongyue Tianlan's relationship with the hidden sword manor was not shallow. So what was his purpose in coming here this time? He must be here to snatch that sword as well. Xie Fengliu's voice sounded in his ears. Ji Xinyu lamented in her heart that Xie Fenglu really knew how to read her mind. She asked, it said that it's a female sword. If he came to take the sword, who would he give it to? Chapter 2899. Could it be that he wanted to give it to her? Breakup compensation? Xie Fenglu smiled lightly, his eyes filled with disdain. 8 days ago, I saw him drinking with a white-clothed woman in a restaurant in Autumn Maple City. That white-clothed woman was extremely beautiful, and their expressions were very intimate. Ji Xinyue's fingertips paused for a moment, then she raised her eyebrows. I heard that he has many female friends, that lady in white might be one of them. Meeting a female friend by chance and having a drink in a restaurant was a very normal thing. Just like her, she also had a few female friends and would usually go for a drink when she met them. Of course, she had always been using the identity of Xinyu to outsiders. None of those friends knew her true identity and wanted nothing more than to put their arms around her shoulders when they saw her. Fortunately, she managed to slap them away without batting an eyelid. Ji Xinyu realized that her thoughts had wandered off again and quickly pulled herself back. Xie Fengliu's voice sounded again. That lady in white didn't seem like an ordinary female friend. He treated her differently and looked at her with a very gentle gaze. I also heard a few words of their conversation. That lady seemed to have mentioned some kind of sword, and then Rongyue Tianlan said to leave it to him. Now it seems that he came here to fight for the sword for that lady. There are already many opponents this time if he joins in. As he spoke, Xie Fenglu was already very worried. Ji Xinyu frowned slightly and unhappily scolded her junior brother. Eavesdropping is immoral. Why did you have to listen in on other people's conversations? Xie Fenglu was speechless. After scolding her junior brother, Ji Xinyu didn't speak anymore and lowered her head to take a sip of wine. She and Rongyue Tianlan had already broken off their engagement and had nothing to do with each other anymore. Therefore it had nothing to do with her who he fought for the sword for. At most, there would be one more opponent to fight for the sword. It was nothing, she didn't have much attachment to the sword in the first place. She twirled the wine glass in her hand and was deep in thought when she suddenly felt Xie Fenglu on her left side tense up. She was slightly stunned and turned to look at him. What's wrong? What are you nervous about? Before she could finish her sentence, there seemed to be movement on her right side. A clear and magnetic voice sounded. This seat is not bad, this supreme immortal will sit here. Ji Xinyu turned her head stiffly, and saw the exalted immortal Rongyue Tianlan sitting down on the empty seat to her right. The distance between them was less than half a foot, and when they sat down, his shoulder was almost touching hers. The familiar faint plum fragrance entered her nose, causing Ji Xinyu to feel an indescribable sense of irritation. This person had a halo around him. As he sat there, he attracted the attention of everyone present. Ever since he appeared, all the women present were dumbfounded. Even Yu Shuashang's cold eyes flashed with a touch of fire. Although she did not stare directly at Rongyue Tian, she still glanced at her from time to time. Therefore Rongyue Tianlan's every move did not escape her eyes. She saw this exalted immortal Rongyu politely reject the hidden sword manor lord's good intentions, saying that she was also here to fight for the sword, so she should sit at the same table as everyone else. Then he fluttered over to them. The other men were still fine, but the women below almost went crazy. Their eyes followed him, and they couldn't wait to invite him to sit at the same table as them. They might not be able to get the sword, but if they could eat at the same table as this supreme immortal, then this trip would not be in vain. Chapter 2900. Although Yu Shuashang's expression did not change, her fingers holding the wine cup were trembling slightly. She was not far from Ji Xinyue's table. Seeing that he was walking towards her son, she immediately transmitted a message to Lu Hui deity, asking him to quickly get up and give up his seat. Lu Hui deity was naturally unwilling, but Yu Shuashang was very anxious and her words were also very strict. She made it clear that if he did not give up his seat now, she would never see him again and would never contact him again for the rest of their lives. Lu Hui deity could only reluctantly get up. Yu Shuashang waved her sleeves, and all the cups and plates that Lu Hui deity had used disappeared, as if no one had ever sat on that seat. Yu Shuashang stood up lightly, her eyes looking at Rongyue Tian who was gradually approaching, and a faint smile bloomed on her ice-cold little face. Her gesture of inviting him to sit with her could not be more obvious. However, Rongyue Tian acted as if he did not see her at all. He walked past her and went straight to the table where Ji Xinyu was sitting, and then sat down leisurely. Yu Shuashang's smile froze on her lips. She slowly took a step back and sat back in her seat. As for Lu Hui deity, he originally wanted to sit at Ji Xinyue's table after getting up. After all, this was the only empty seat. However, that empty seat was openly taken by Rongyue Tian. He paused and stood there with an unreadable expression. Yu Shuashang transmitted a message, Lu Hui deity, you should sit down. Lu Hui deity's gaze turned to her face, and there was a hint of coldness in his eyes, which made Yu Shuashang's heart turn cold. However, since Lu Hui deity saw her, he stuck to her like a pug, so she did not take Lu Hui deity's coldness to heart. She pursed her lips and her voice became cold. You're not sitting? If you don't sit, then don't ever sit. This sentence was obviously a threat. Lu Hui deity's face was faintly livid. He was the richest second generation of the rich, and he grew up with everyone's compliments. Women circled around him, and he was also a proud and arrogant person. He was really moved by Yu Shuashang's beauty and temperament. The colder she was to him, the more he wanted to conquer her, the more he wanted to have her. For this, he did not hesitate to throw away his self-esteem. It wasn't easy for him to get the beauty to look at him a few more times, speak a few words to him softly, and allow him to sit by her side. Was he really going to give up this opportunity because of a moment of anger? He glanced at Yu Shuashang again. Yu Shuashang pursed her lips slightly and didn't even look at him. She lowered her head slightly and he could only see the side of her face that was as white as jade. It was as perfect as a jade carving. She was the most beautiful and elegant beauty he had ever seen. It would be a pity to miss this opportunity. In the end, he sat back down without any backbone. After he sat down, Yu Shuashang secretly let out a sigh of relief, but her pretty face became even colder. She was indeed worthy of the title of Ice Beauty. Seeing her like this, Immortal Master Lu Hui poured her a cup of wine and said in a low voice, "You're cold, drink a cup of wine to warm your body." Yu Shuashang pursed her lips and ignored him. Lu Hui Immortal Monarch had a headache. He raised his hand and rubbed the space between his eyebrows. He felt that everything seemed to be going wrong today. "Are you Lu Hui Immortal Monarch? Just now you said that I broke off the engagement. What does that mean? Why don't you explain it in detail?" Rong Yuetian's voice sounded faintly, and everyone in the hall was silent again. It seemed that he had not let Lu Hui Immortal Monarch go. The veins on Lu Hui Immortal Monarch's forehead jumped even more. This. He glanced at Yu Shuashang, but Yu Shuashang didn't look at him. Obviously, she didn't want to help him out. Chapter 2901. He could only bite the bullet and say, "This means that His Highness Rong Yu doesn't like Princess Ji Xinyue. Ji Xinyue isn't as outstanding as they say." Ji Xinyue frowned. What kind of strange argument was this? Rong Yu Tianlan didn't like her because she wasn't outstanding enough? Ji Xinyue wasn't made of gold or jewels. She couldn't make everyone like her. Rong Yu Tianlan wasn't some yardstick either. Anything he didn't like wasn't good. She placed the wine cup on the table and was about to say something when Rong Yu Tianlan's hand suddenly reached out and pressed against the back of her hand. His hand was warm. Ji Xinyue froze. She was about to withdraw her hand, but he had already moved his hand away. He picked up the cup of tea in front of her and blew on the tea leaves. He said calmly, "You're wrong. I want to cancel the engagement not because she isn't outstanding enough, but because she's too outstanding. I have no choice but to cancel the engagement." His words shocked everyone. Who would cancel an engagement because a woman was too outstanding? Everyone looked at him, including Ji Xinyue. She wanted to hear what nonsense he was going to say. Deity Lu Hui sneered. Supreme Immortal Rong Yu's words are confusing. The better the woman, the more the man likes her. Why would a man cancel the engagement just because the woman is too outstanding? Is this man too self-conscious? Does he feel that he can't compare to his fiancée and is afraid of being suppressed by her? If someone else said this, I might believe it. But Supreme Immortal Rong Yu, I can't agree. Supreme Immortal Rong Yu probably said this out of benevolence. After canceling the engagement, he feels sorry for Princess Ji Xinyue, so he's speaking up for her. This immortal lord understands. When he said the last sentence, he looked at Rong Yu Tianlan with eyes full of smiles, as if they were both men and knew each other well. Rong Yu Tianlan put down the teacup lightly and smiled. "What do you know? I haven't finished speaking yet. Is this how the Lu family teaches you?" His smile was like a spring breeze, but his words were like ice blades. Deity Lu Hui's face turned pale. If someone else said this to him, he would have been furious. But since this heavenly immortal Rong Yu had said such things about him, he did not dare to blow his top. His handsome face was a mixture of green and white, and his mouth was slightly open, unable to speak. Another immortal spoke up. "Can exalted immortal Rong Yu give us a reason for canceling the engagement because the other party is too outstanding?" Rong Yu Tianlan took a sip of tea and said in a light voice, "It's very simple. It's because the marriage contract is the order of the parents and the words of the matchmaker. This kind of engagement was not in line with our statuses, and it was not respectful to her. What's more, I even ran away from the marriage at that time and caused her a lot of harm, so this marriage contract is even more unreasonable for her. That's why I had to go through so much trouble to break off this engagement. Then I'll chase after her again." Clang. The wine cup in Ji Xinyu's hand fell to the ground. She looked at Rong Yuetian in disbelief, feeling that he had taken the wrong medicine today. Or maybe his brain was flooded with water. He broke off the engagement with her so that he could pursue her again? Did he eat too much? He had broken off the engagement with her for Ji Tianyue's sake. If others didn't know the inside story, would they think she didn't know? What did he mean by saying this all of a sudden? Rong Yuetian turned to look at her and smiled gently. Brother Shin, are you very surprised? How could she just be surprised? She was simply too surprised, okay? Chapter 2902. Rongyue Tianlan turned his finger and a white jade wine cup appeared. He placed it in front of Ji Xinyue and poured her another cup. Calm down and listen to me. Ji Xinyue resisted the urge to splash wine on his face. She smiled and said calmly, I'm just an outsider. It doesn't matter if I'm shocked or not. If your highness Rongyue is interested, please continue. She wanted to see what kind of heresy he was going to say. Rongyue Tianlan smiled gently. This engagement was once a shackle between us. It's also where I let her down the most. This engagement has always brought her nightmares, not happiness. If we just go with the flow, she may not feel happy every time she thinks about it in the future. Therefore, I can only break this shackle first. I want to give her a completely new marriage contract, a pure marriage contract between me and her, and not a marriage contract between the Nantian clan and the Eastern Sky clan for the sake of joining hands. That is the true respect for her. Ji Xinyue. Bullshit. That was Ji Xinyue's evaluation of his words. As for the others, they were moved by his words. There were already a few women whose eyes were glistening with tears. They were moved by His Highness Rongyue's infatuation. They were all secretly envious of Princess Ji Xinyue. Because of Rongyue Tianlan's attitude, Princess Ji Xinyue gained more votes and more points. The host finally found a chance to speak. So, Supreme Immortal Rongyue is also fighting for this sword for Princess Ji Xinyue? Rongyue Tianlan said, I'm indeed fighting for the person I love. Applause rang out in the hall, especially those who knew they had no hope of winning the sword. They clapped the loudest. They clapped and cheered for Rongyue Tianlan while looking at Yu Shueshang. Just now, this woman's tone was as if she was determined to win. With a cold face, she pretended to be an ice beauty, causing their men to look at her frequently. It was obvious that they were fascinated by her. This made some of the women extremely angry. Now that they had a chance to suppress her, they would naturally spare no effort. Yu Shueshang's pretty face could no longer be described as black. She pursed her lips tightly and suddenly laughed softly. Your Highness Rongyue is so affectionate. Even Shueshang is touched. However, this divine sword had to choose its master personally. In other words, the future master of the divine sword had to come here personally. However, Princess Xinyu did not come. After all, she was the princess of a clan, and she was also the beloved disciple of sect leader Zi Yun. Evidently, she did not take this sword seriously. On the other hand, the divine sword requires its owner to treat it wholeheartedly. Princess Ji Xinyue is not qualified in this aspect, so I'm afraid you will all be disappointed. These words were clearly meant for the divine sword to hear. After all, everyone present could sense the summoning power of the divine sword, so they believed that their actions could be seen and heard by the divine sword. This Yu Shueshang looked cold and indifferent, as if she was untainted by the mortal world, but her scheming was not ordinary. Rong Yuetian finally glanced at her, the corners of her lips curled up. Fairy Shueshang is indeed a cold and elegant white lotus. Yu Shueshang was stunned. She did not understand the meaning of the phrase white lotus, and thought that Rongyue Tianlan was praising her. A smile appeared on her pretty face. Your Highness Rongyue is overpraising me. Rongyue Tianlan smiled. You're not overpraising me. This phrase is very suitable to describe Fairy Shueshang. However, Fairy Shueshang forgot one thing, there was more at night. Moi. Chapter 2903. Rongyue Tianlan smiled. You're flattering me. This description is perfect for Fairy Shueshang. However, Fairy Shueshang will be the one who will be disappointed. Princess Ji Xinyu values any weapon. Even if it's an ordinary saber, she will take good care of it, not willing to let it be damaged. If she gets the divine sword, it will complement each other. The divine sword will be able to display its true power and become famous. If it falls into the hands of a woman who only seeks protection from a man and doesn't work hard herself, what's the difference between her and a vase? Yu Shueshang was speechless. Her usually snow-white face turned red. Supreme Immortal Rongyue's words are biased. Shueshang has always relied on her own efforts and has never sought protection from a man. Rongyue Tianlan leisurely turned her wine cup and said, Is that so? Of course. Yu Shueshang proudly raised her head. Although Princess Xinyu has been treated unfairly, she is still a princess. A starving camel is still bigger than a horse. She won't worry about food and clothing. When she wants to learn, she can even become a disciple of sect master Ziyun and become his personal disciple. Naturally, she can learn whatever she wants to learn. When Shuashang was young, her family was poor and she had no one to rely on. Everything was exchanged for by Shuashang's own efforts. Rongyue Tianlan turned to look at her. You were born in the Eastern Sky Clan, right? Yu Shuashang didn't expect him to know her background. She paused and said, yes, Shuashang and Supreme Immortal Rongyue are from the same clan. Rongyue Tianlan said indifferently, the Eastern Sky Clan attaches great importance to the cultivation of talents. Anyone who is 100 years old will undergo a bone structure test. No matter rich or poor, as long as one's bone structure is good, they can enter the Eastern Sky Academy to study and cultivate. There is no charge and food and accommodation are provided. Your bone structure is good. If you enter the Eastern Sky Academy as you wish, you can learn a lot of skills there, right? Once your results in the Eastern Sky Academy are outstanding, the masters of the academy will naturally recommend you to various sects to learn martial arts. I heard that a master once recommended you to sect Master Ziyun 1,000 years ago. It was you who didn't pass the entrance test of sect Master Ziyun. Who can you blame? Yu Shuashang was stumped. It's not that Shuashang's aptitude isn't good. It's just that the Purple Cloud sect leader no longer accepts disciples. Otherwise, Shuashang would definitely be able to become his disciple. Rongyue Tianlan had yet to speak when Xie Fenglu sneered, nonsense. My master stopped accepting disciples 730 years ago, but it wasn't that he didn't accept any disciples at all. He would still accept any good talent. For example, I became his disciple 690 years ago. He didn't accept you back then only because you didn't have enough aptitude. Yu Shuashang's face turned even redder. She sneered and said, that's hard to say. Shuashang's aptitude has always been the best among women. How is it that my aptitude isn't enough? The sect master refused to accept me because he only accepted one female disciple. It's Princess Ji Xinyu's good fortune to pay her respects to him first. Xie Fenglu said, nonsense. My master never said that he would only accept one female disciple. He didn't take them in because they didn't meet his requirements. Then Princess Xinyu met his requirements? Being rejected back then had obviously affected Yu Shuashang greatly. She couldn't remain calm. Isn't it because the other party is a princess? The sect master had no choice but to accept her due to her noble status. Chapter 2904. Xie Fenglu laughed. You really know how to find excuses for yourself. My master's reputation was widespread, and I don't know how many people wanted to be his disciple. Among them, there was no lack of princesses from various races, but my master rejected all of them because they did not meet his requirements. And my senior sister. At this point, Xie Fenglu glared at Rongjuishan fiercely. Because of someone's escape, my senior sister has been branded with a name that doesn't belong to her. Words like jinx, bad aptitude, stupid don't be too common. When she was first sent here, my master did not want to accept her at all. He did not even see her and ordered people to send her back. It was my senior sister who knelt in front of the Ziyun sect's gate and begged for 3 days. She did not ask for anything else, but for my master to see her and really test her aptitude before deciding whether she should stay or leave. My master was moved by her tenacity, so he came out to see her. He originally wanted to make her give up and send her away, but he did not expect that when he really met her, he found out that my senior sister had a rare aptitude that was hard to come by in 1,000 years, so he hurriedly accepted her. This could be said to be the Ziyun sect's secret, and it was the first time everyone heard about it. They were all stunned, not expecting Ji Xinyu to have such an encounter at that time. Ji Xinyu could not help but glance at Xie Fenglu. She did not expect this kid to be so good at digging up her secrets. How could he know such a confidential matter so clearly? Xie Fenglu's lips curled up slightly. Master regretted almost missing out on a good seedling, and even opened the door later on, no longer limiting the number of disciples between men and women. At that time you went to acknowledge him as your master. If your aptitude was enough, he would definitely not miss it. The reason why he did not accept you was obviously because your aptitude was too poor. Now, you were talking about your identity, saying that you were rejected because you were not a princess. Don't you feel ashamed? Yu Shuashang was very embarrassed, and her face turned even redder. Rongyue Tianlan's words were like a needle hidden in silk floss, but Xie Fenglu's words were very direct. which made her extremely embarrassed. She had always been cold and arrogant in front of others. To outsiders, she had said that her aptitude had surprised the sovereigns and sovereigns. The reason why Sovereign Ziyun didn't accept her was because he didn't accept female disciples. She even said that Sovereign Ziyun often regretted missing out on her. Because her kung fu was really good in the later stage, coupled with the beauty of life and this cold and seemingly aloof appearance, she didn't look like someone who would lie. She actually managed to fool a large number of men into believing her words and gave her the title of Jianghu's #1 beauty. The title of Jianghu's #1 beauty did not only refer to her looks, but also her martial arts. The more lies she told, the more they became the truth. According to modern standards, this girl's marketing strategy was good, and her self-promotion ability was strong. Now that those lies had been exposed, she felt quite embarrassed. She coldly laughed and said, "Sir Sierra is Princess Xin Yu's junior apprentice brother, so of course he's speaking up for her. I don't want to talk about what happened in the past anymore. Only those involved can understand what's right and wrong." Although young Master Xie was the last disciple of Sect Master Ziyun, he had entered the sect too late. He might not know much about the past. Even if he had heard some rumors, it would have been manipulated by others. Might not be true. Her words were very powerful. She clearly meant that Xie Fengliu's words were groundless and could not be believed. Chapter 2905. She even hinted that what Xie Fenglu heard was said by Ji Xinyu herself. Besides, they were on the same side, so everything Xie Fenglu said couldn't be trusted. Sure enough, after she said this, everyone began to doubt Xie Fengliu's original words again. Deity Lu Hui took the opportunity to say, "That's right. Lord Xie has always fought for opportunities for your senior sister, so naturally he'll side with her. What he said is unbelievable. For example, you said that the snow-clad fairy was rejected by Sect Master Ziyun because of her poor aptitude. However, the snow-clad fairy's aptitude clearly wasn't bad. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to join the Clear Sky sect and become Sect Master Ziyun's disciple. It's even more impossible for her to cultivate to the level of a deity at such a young age. She won the title of the #1 beauty in the Jianghu. Don't you think so?" Yu Shuashang had many followers, so they all nodded in agreement. Yu Shuashang's eyes flashed with pride and she smiled faintly. Actually, there's no need to mention the past. Although Xuechang's background is low, the heavens reward those who work hard. Xuechang finally won some fame in the Jianghu. She relied entirely on her own strength, and didn't rely on anyone or any background. The divine sword has a spirit, so it won't recognize a master based on one's status, but on one's actual ability. She floated there, like a plum blossom proud of the moon, looking awe-inspiring and unyielding. Xie Fenglu was rendered speechless by her words. Rongyu Ishinlin sat there, twirling his fan as he watched her speak. When she finished speaking, he slowly opened his mouth and asked a seemingly unrelated question. Where did Fairy Xuechang go after she was rejected by sect leader Ziyun? Yu Shuashang was stunned, then answered, Xuechang went to the Clear Sky sect after she was rejected, and was accepted as a disciple by sect leader Ziyun. Rongyu Ishinlin twirled his fan. You were rejected by sect leader Ziyun in February of that year. However, you entered the Clear Sky sect in June of the following year. Where did you go during that time? Yu Shuashang's heart skipped a beat. I traveled everywhere to find a master. Then you and Immortal Master Wu Tianqing met at that time, right? Rongyu Ishinlin threw out another question. Yu Shuashang's expression changed slightly. Exalted Immortal Rong Yu also knows Immortal Master Wu Tianqing? I am the one asking you. You only need to answer yes or no. Rongyu Ishinlin's voice turned cold. As soon as he released his exalted immortal aura, Yu Shuashang was suppressed to the point that she almost couldn't breathe. Unconsciously she told the truth, yes. Wu Tianqing's aptitude is not bad. She has cultivated to the immortal monarch realm before becoming a disciple. You met her during your travels and she fell in love with you at first sight, right? Rongyue Tianlan continued to ask. Yu Shuashang pursed her lips. She didn't want to answer, but she couldn't help but say, yes, he likes me very much. How much do you like her? Can I betray my family for you? Rongyu Ishinlin's eyes flickered. Yu Shuashang's face turned pale, but she couldn't stop herself from saying, yes, I could tell that his aptitude wasn't really good, so I tried to get some information from him. I finally found out that his family was refining a kind of secret medicine that could improve a person's aptitude, so I asked him to get the medicine for me. Medicine? Refining the medicine? Although the medicine had such a heaven-defying effect, it was extremely difficult to refine. Not only were the herbs hard to find, but it was also difficult to gather a set even after decades. More importantly, the medicinal primer needed to refine it was very abnormal. It required the flesh and blood of the first child of the Wu family's direct bloodline. The child had to be born when the child was 6 months old using a secret medicine to hasten the birth of the child. Is that right? Rongyu Ishinlin pressed on. Chapter 2906. There was actually such a perverted medicine. Everyone's expression changed. They all knew about the Wu family. Generally, a family might not produce a genius with extraordinary aptitude after many years, but the Wu family produced one in every generation, making everyone in the Fanning continent envious. So this was how the Wu family got their good aptitude. At this time, Yu Shuashang really became the center of attention. She bit her lips so hard that they almost broke, but still nodded. Yes. The Wu family's medicine is passed down from generation to generation. Every direct descendant of the Wu family will refine their first child into medicine. Wu Tianqing is the eldest son of the Wu family's direct descendant. He actually hates this method of his family, so he traveled the continent to find a way to replace this primer. In the end, he met you. This method was originally the Wu family's secret, but he still told you. At that time, you agreed with him and even said that you would help him find such a substitute. In the end, you got him drunk at night and sent him to the bed of a virgin. He mistook that woman for you and had a night of passion with her. Before Wu Tianqing woke up, you took the woman away and slept next to him. After he woke up, he thought that he had this relationship with you and treated you better. He even treated you as his wife and passed the Wu family's top secret martial arts to you. You pretended to be a snake with him, and at the same time, you tried to make the woman and Wu Tianqing sleep together. Finally, the woman got pregnant, and you used your pregnancy as an excuse to not get close to him. Wu Tianqing didn't suspect you and treated you even better. He also promised you that he would never use your fetus to refine pills, even if it meant offending the entire family. Is that right? Yu Shuashang's face was as white as snow. Her eyes grew bigger and bigger, but she still couldn't control herself from telling the truth. Yes, the elixirs in his family are passed down from generation to generation. For example, the elixirs he ate were left to him by his father. His first child also needs to be refined into elixirs. Then, when his son is 100 years old, he can eat that elixir. The other herbs are already prepared by the previous generation, just waiting for his first child. This was really a big secret, and everyone was shocked when they heard it. Ji Xinyu had been listening and watching from the side. She could already tell that Yu Shuashang was under some kind of spell of Rongyue Tianlan, so she couldn't tell these secrets to anyone. Most of them were old foxes who had been in the Jianghu for a long time. Naturally, they could tell. At first, everyone was still a little suspicious in their hearts. They thought that Rongyue Tianlan had used some kind of spell to control her, causing her mind to be muddled for a moment. She would answer whatever she was asked. But now that he heard her say it in such detail, he couldn't help but believe it. What did you do when the woman was 6 months pregnant? Rongyu Ishinlin was like a hypnotist at this moment, guiding him patiently. I deliberately quarreled with Wu Tianqing and asked him to push me. Then, I pretended that I was pregnant and hid away from him. Then, I secretly went out to use medicine to hasten the birth of the child and kept it by my side. When Wu Tianqing broke in, he saw me holding the child and crying. He felt very guilty towards me and thought it was God's will. In order to make it up to me, he mixed the child with those herbs and made me take the pill. What happened after that? Rongyu Ishinlin continued to ask. After that, my aptitude was greatly improved. Chapter 2907. Later on, my aptitude improved tremendously. Then, I created a tragedy and made it seem like I had died. Because I had used a fake name for Wu Tianqing, I successfully joined the Clear Sky sect after escaping and changed back to my real name. No one else knows about what happened between him and me, so no one else knows about this matter. Everyone was speechless. This was truly a good plan. It was also vicious and decisive enough. Everyone knew what had happened to Wu Tianqing. It was said that he had the highest aptitude in the Wu family and was the only child who was favored the most. Later, he met a strange woman during his travels and fell in love with her at first sight. They were inseparable until the woman died tragically. Wu Tianqing couldn't bear the blow and went crazy. He ran around the Sanskrit continent until he somehow fell into the sea and was never seen again. The Wu family's direct line of descent was also cut off because of his early death. Since then, the Wu family had been unable to recover from the setback, and no one with aptitude had been born. Everyone looked at Yu Shuashang with shock and disbelief in their eyes. No one expected the Snow Fairy, who had always been known to be otherworldly, to have such a scheming mind. Wu Tianqing's story was a tragic love story in the Jianghu. It was almost comparable to the modern version of Liangzhu, and it was even adapted into a novel that was widely read in the Fanning continent. Who would have thought that such a sordid past was hidden behind this beautiful love story? It was just a big scam from beginning to end. It was just a show directed and acted by the Snow Fairy for her own selfish reasons. She was the only one who benefited from it from the beginning to the end. The men who had been circling Yu Shuashang just now were also looking at her, as if they had been struck by lightning. Rongyue Tianlan took another sip of tea and smiled faintly. Very well. Since you said it yourself, I don't need to say anything more. Your kung fu was indeed obtained through your own efforts, but the methods you used were too dirty. As for how you continued to use your beauty to seduce men and cheat them of all kinds of treasures and family skills, I don't need to list them one by one. It's tiring. He turned to the side and poured a cup of tea for Ji Xinyu, pushing it to her. Don't just drink, it's bad for your stomach. Ji Xinyu was actually shocked by the secret that Rong Yuetian had revealed. She was still in a daze, but Rong Yuetian's attitude changed too quickly. She did not react in time. He pushed the tea over and she picked it up to drink. After taking a sip, she finally realized that something was wrong. The cup in her hand was Rongyue Tianlan's private collection. The bottom of the cup was even engraved with his personal seal. And the cup that she was drinking tea with just now was held in Rongyue Tianlan's hands, slowly sipping. They changed their cups. And she didn't even know when it was changed. Ji Xinyu looked at the cup in her hand. This should be Rongyue Tianlan's personal cup, right? When she was drinking with him at the Moon Admiring Peak, she saw him drinking tea from this very cup. Rongyu Tianlan loved treasures. Any of the utensils he used were all treasures, and the cup in Ji Xinyu's hand was no exception. It was azure in color and sparkled like a pearl. When he held it in his hand, it felt warm and comfortable. What was even rarer was that the patterns on the cup could change according to the type of tea in the cup. It could be sunny after the rain, misty rain, or cloudy, and so on. Chapter 2908. Ji Xinyu had taken a few glances at the teacup when he was drinking tea, so she remembered it. But now, the teacup was in her hands and she had taken a few sips. Because his actions were too natural, and she was attracted by the story just now, she did not notice it for a moment. Now that she was holding the teacup, she felt that it was a little hot. She quickly put the teacup down and cast a cleaning spell on it, then pushed it back to him. Exalted Immortal, you took the wrong teacup. Rong Yuishinlin did not care and looked at her with a faint smile. It's just a teacup, I don't care so much. He pushed the teacup back to her. You don't care but I care. Ji Xinyu secretly clenched her fists, but arguing with him over a teacup, at this time, it seemed like she was making a mountain out of a molehill. Ji Xinyu felt that she was a magnanimous deity, so she did not bother with Rong Yuishinlin, and took out another teacup from the storage space to use. Her teacup was practical, simple, and elegant. It was a teacup carved out of green jade, and there was not even a pattern on it. Naturally, it was not as exquisite, simple, and elegant as Rong Yuishinlin's teacup. But it was her own thing, so she felt comfortable using it. Rong Yuishinlin's teacup was casually left there by her, and it looked a little redundant. Rong Yuishinlin glanced at his lonely and abandoned teacup, then looked at her, his dark eyes as deep as the abyss. Ji Xinyu's heart skipped a beat when he looked at her, and she felt a little guilty. But on second thought, she did not do anything shameful, so why should she feel guilty? So, she looked back at him righteously. Their eyes met, and there was a hint of provocation in her gaze, but Rong Yuishinlin curled his lips slightly. It's fake. It's fake. It's fake. Yu Shuashang suddenly shouted, and her voice almost tore through the air. I was being controlled just now. What I said was not what I wanted to say at all. I don't know Wu Tianqing. I don't know him at all. Rong Yuishinlin turned to look at her, who was shouting herself hoarse and did not say anything. He just picked up the teacup and took another sip. The men in the hall originally wanted to squeeze their heads to sit with this ice beauty, but at this moment, they wished they could stay far away from her. Everyone liked beauties, and there were also a large number of people who wanted to conquer ice and snow beauties. However, most people would still keep a respectful distance from a venomous and scorpion beauty who had two faces. Even the man who had been sitting with her and trying to please her left quietly. He would rather go to another table than sit with her. Yu Shuashang had always been the moon surrounded by the stars, but now she had become a lonely bitch that no one cared about. How could the proud and arrogant Yu Shuashang bear such a fall? Once she broke away from Rongyue Tianlan's spell, she immediately clamored without caring about her image. She denied all the dirty things she had done in the past. Anyway, there were no witnesses or evidence. She would never admit it. She looked at Rongyue Tianlan with bloodshot eyes and said, Shuashang knows that you're biased towards Princess Ji Xinyue and want to obtain the divine sword for her. However, you can't use this method just to obtain the divine sword. You're an exalted immortal and your spell is powerful. Shuashang is ashamed of being controlled by you. You can say whatever you want Shuashang to say and pin such a big crime on Shuashang. How can you bear to wrong a weak woman like me who has no background and no status? Shuashang can only die to prove my innocence. Chapter 2909. She suddenly raised a palm and slapped it down on her own head. She was really fierce. This palm carried the faint sound of wind and thunder. Once it hit, her big head would be smashed into a rotten watermelon. Of course, this palm was not very fast because it needed to be activated in advance. She calculated that Rongyue Shenlin would definitely not allow her to die like this at this time. He would save her. Otherwise he would be accused of framing the younger generation. She also left enough time for Rongyue Shenlin to react, lest he could not save her in time. Unexpectedly, her palm was about to hit her forehead. She had already felt the huge pressure brought by the palm on her head. Rongyue Shenlin was still looking at her lazily and had no intention of making a move. At this moment Yu Shuashang regretted it. She had sold her body many times and put in a lot of effort to climb to this position. How could she be willing to die like this? But the words had already been said. If no one stopped her, how could she have the nerve to go easy on him? She regretted it so much that she wanted to vomit blood. She felt that she should not have been so impulsive that she could not step down. Now she could only slap herself to death first. Fortunately, she had already cultivated her soul. As long as her soul did not die, even if her body died, she could make a new body and reincarnate 100 years later. She made up her mind and wanted to slap the real thing. Suddenly, a whirlwind flashed by and stopped her palm from descending. Rongyue Shenlin finally made a move. Yu Shuashang breathed a sigh of relief. Just as she was about to take the opportunity to put down her hand that had almost caused trouble, a blue light followed closely behind the whirlwind. The whirlwind stopped her palm, but the blue light directly attacked her Baihui acupoint. Yu Shuashang's face changed greatly. If she committed suicide, she could still leave her soul behind and make a comeback. But if she was hit by the blue light, even her soul would be scattered and she would really die. In this crisis, she did not have time to think carefully. She suddenly bent over and at the same time, her palms turned up like a lotus flower. A green shield appeared from her palms and shrouded her body in an instant. This move was very beautiful. It was a real life-saving move. Rongyue Shenlin's eyelashes curved slightly. With a flip of her palm, the blue light disappeared automatically before it could touch the shield. Yu Shuashang felt as if she had just been saved from the king of hell. She broke out in a cold sweat. When she saw that the blue light had disappeared, she removed the green light shield around her body and glared at Rongyue Shenlin. You, a dignified immortal, actually wanted to kill me to silence me? Her words were very righteous, but Rongyue Tian looked at her with a smile that was not a smile. She turned the teacup in her hand and asked leisurely, "What trick did you use just now?" Yu Shuashang paused. Her face suddenly turned pale, and cold sweat seeped out of her forehead. She tried to refute, What trick? She was too nervous just now. He actually couldn't help but use this move. Rongyue Tian no longer paid attention to her. Instead, her gaze swept across the crowd. Who recognizes the life-saving shield that Yu Xianzi used just now? The people present could be said to be a gathering of masters. They were all experienced and knowledgeable people. A few people had already shouted, "That is the Wu family's unique skill. It is also Wu Tianqing's unique life-saving skill. It is called the Green Light Shield. I once drank wine with Wu Tianqing and he showed it to me. It can't be wrong. Yes. I have seen it before too." Chapter 2910. This move was lost after Wu Tianqing died. I didn't expect to see it again today. Bah! How dare you say you don't know Wu Tianqing? Then how did you learn her ultimate move? That's right. This ultimate move needs to be combined with the mental cultivation method. Even if an outsider saw Wu Tianqing use this move 100 times, it would be useless if they didn't know the mental cultivation method. This move was obviously taught to you by Wu Tianqing. Shameless. How dare you deny it and say that Heavenly Immortal Rongyu is framing you? Luckily, Heavenly Immortal Rongyu exposed her true colors. Otherwise, who knows how many stupid men would be fooled. There was a lot of discussion in the hall and they were all scolding Yu Shuashang. Especially those women, they couldn't be happier. When they mentioned stupid men, those women even threw a glance at those men who were surrounding Yu Shuashang just now. Of course, Lu Hui deity received the most glances. His handsome face was pale. He originally insisted on sitting at the same table with Yu Shuashang, but now he finally stood up and turned to leave. Yu Shuashang's face was burning. It was redder than being slapped a dozen times. If there was a hole in the ground, she would have crawled into it. This was the first time in her life that she was so embarrassed. She took a deep breath and wanted to save some face for herself. So what if I know him? He only taught me a few moves. This is real. As for the rest is fake. Her voice was loud, but no one believed her anymore. Even Lu Hui deity didn't believe her anymore. Yu Shuashang panicked and pulled Lu Hui deity's sleeve. Lu Hui, you don't believe me? Didn't you say you would always believe me, love me, and spoil me? Lu Hui deity looked at her and pulled back his sleeve. He said coldly, I'm blind. Then he turned and walked away. She was the only one left at the lively table. Yu Shuashang stood there looking lonely. She knew that she should leave now, but she couldn't accept it. She could still feel the call of the godly sword, and this feeling was even stronger than before. It seemed that the godly sword wanted her to stay and didn't want her to leave. She steeled her heart and said, the innocent knows they are innocent, and the muddy knows they are muddy. She simply sat down in front of the table with a cold expression on her face. Her nose was at her mouth and her mouth was at her heart. She no longer cared about the ridicule and abuse around her. This was out of the women's expectations. They didn't think that someone could be so thick-skinned. These women tried their best to insult her with words, but Yu Shuashang seemed to have eaten a heavy weight and steeled her heart, sitting there motionless. Seeing her like this, Ji Xinyu somewhat admired her, admired how thick-skinned she was. Although Yu Shuashang's true colors had been exposed, she had only used Wu Tianqing in a despicable manner, which was not considered a great evil. Even if everyone despised her character, they couldn't really do anything to her. Moreover, the villa master of the hidden sword manor did not chase her away. Therefore, if Yu Shuashang did not leave, no one could do anything about it. After watching the commotion for a long time, the host finally followed the rules and asked the last person, young master Huang Qinglu, who is this young master fighting for that sword? Huang Qinglu had been invisible just now, and everyone had almost forgotten about his existence. He was sitting at the same table as Ji Xinyu. 3 of the 4 people at the table chose Ji Xinyu. Chapter 29:11. Everyone's first reaction was that he would definitely choose Ji Xinyu. Unexpectedly, this Master Huang smiled and looked at Xie Fenglu saying calmly, I did it for him. Everyone, the wine cup in Ji Xinyu's hand almost fell to the ground again. Xie Fenglu jumped up, his baby face flushed red. What nonsense are you talking about? I'm a man. Huang Qinglu was very calm. He raised his eyebrows and looked at him. Did I say you're a woman? Then why did you want to give me that broken sword? Xie Fenglu was about to speak without thinking. Just as he finished speaking, he felt as if his heart was hit by something angry. Then he disappeared with a whoosh. Everyone was stunned. Ji Xinyu couldn't help but stand up. Fenglu. Just as she stood up, Rongyue Tianlan put the folding fan in his hand on her shoulder. Don't worry, he's fine, it's just that he offended the divine sword with his mouth. The divine sword was angry and cut off his summons. He was punished to leave the mountain. Could it be like this? Ji Xinyu thought of how she was also punished by the divine sword because of one sentence and finally believed it. She couldn't help but look at the culprit, Huang Qinglu, but Huang Qinglu raised his eyebrows and stood up. Since the divine sword is not fated with him, then I don't need to stay here anymore. He turned around and disappeared. Ji Xinyu, who was this Huang Qinglu? There seemed to be something strange between him and Old Ninth. Could it be gay? Her junior brother was gay? She shuddered. Master would beat him to death. Ji Xinyu had always dressed as a man on the mainland. She naturally had a lot of experience. She had seen a few gay couples, and those couples loved each other to death. it was very touching. Ji Xinyu herself didn't object to being gay. Love, in fact, was not differentiated between men and women, she understood. But if her own junior brother was gay, she didn't mind, but her master hated gay people the most. If it wasn't his disciple, as long as he saw gay people, he would always want to break them up, but if it was his disciple, her little junior brother would most likely be skinned alive. Thinking up to this point, Ji Xinyu shuddered again. She had been lost in her thoughts the entire time, so she didn't hear what the hidden sword manor lord had said. Until Rongyue Tianlan, who was beside him, suddenly stood up and said, "I can replace Ji Xinyu and partner with Xinyu." Amidst the silence, Ji Xinyu's consciousness was finally pulled back. She raised her head in confusion. What? Then he was even more surprised to find that there were actually countless passageways around the hall. Each passageway was bottomless and had no end in sight. Hidden Sword Villa's villa master and his subordinates stood at the entrance of a passageway and said, "Then I wish everyone good luck." Then they simply entered the tunnel behind them, and the tunnel quickly disappeared as they entered. What's going on? Ji Xinyu regretted being absent-minded just now, causing her to be completely out of sorts. Rongyue Tian pulled her up. Let's go together." Her figure rose and pulled her to stand in the middle of the hall. "Come, tell me, which one do you want?" Ji Xinyu originally wanted to pull her hand back, but she was stunned by his question. She looked at him with a confused face. "What do you mean, which one do you want? Which passageway do you think beckons you more?" Rongyue Tian looked at her with sparkling eyes. Chapter 29:12. Fortunately, he was still gentlemanly. After pulling Ji Xinyu onto the stage, he let go of her hand. Ji Xinyu looked at the people around her. They were basically in groups of two, pointing at the passageway. It seemed like they were also making a choice. You don't have to look at others, you only have to sense yours. Rong Yuishinlin reminded her. Ji Xinyu looked at him rather patiently. Before that, can you tell me what's going on? Rong Yuishinlin glanced at her. You're really good at walking. It's very simple, the divine sword doesn't choose its master based on character or martial arts. It depends on luck, wisdom, and coordination. In general, it wants to examine the comprehensive index of the divine sword's master, so we have to break through another big hurdle. According to the villa master of the Hidden Sword Manor, these passageways can all lead to the place where the divine sword is placed. It's just that the distance is different and the obstacles inside are also different. Only the top 5 who walk through this passageway to the place where the divine sword is hidden will have the right to be chosen by the divine sword. So troublesome? Although Ji Xinyu didn't quite understand some of the terms he said, she understood the general meaning. She looked at the surrounding passageways, then looked at the men and women who were making their choice. She frowned slightly. Do you need a partner? She saw that the other groups were all male and female partners. Because there were more men than women, the male immortals who didn't have a female partner didn't have the right to enter the passageway. They were sitting at the side drinking in boredom. Rong Yuishinlin said, "Of course, a mixed male and female partner." Ji Xinyu's expression changed slightly. "But you and I. Could it be that her identity had been exposed here?" Rong Yuishinlin looked at her while waving his fan and slowly answered, "I sacrificed a bit, I took your place to make this trip." Ji Xinyu staggered. "What?" Rong Yuishinlin smiled and pulled her directly into a passageway. "Idiot, this is the last passageway, if you dawdle any longer it'll be too late." Ji Xinyu's vision turned black, and she fell into the passageway. Ji Xinyu finally had the chance to break free from his hand. In such a short period of time, he had already pulled her hand twice. She was now wearing men's clothing. What was going on with two men constantly pulling and pulling? In the eyes of outsiders, they would think that they were gay. His aura was too strong. Ji Xinyu didn't want to be so close to him. She took a step back and leaned against the wall of the tunnel. She crossed her arms and looked at him sincerely. "Hi Immortal, I think we need to talk." To be honest, she was confused by his actions this time. There were so many people at the banquet earlier, and it wasn't convenient for her to reveal her identity, so there were some things that were inconvenient for her to say or ask. But now she felt a little uncomfortable. Rong Yuetian looked at her for a moment and nodded her head decisively. "Okay, you ask and I'll answer." Ji Xinyu pondered for a moment. She had a bunch of questions in her mind. After sorting them out, she asked the most practical question first. Fight for this divine sword. If a man can pass himself off as a woman, then why don't those men who haven't found a female partner try to be like you? Rong Yuetianlan waved her fan and gave Ji Xinyu an answer. Because their skin is not as thick as mine. Ji Xinyue, the corner of her mouth twitched. I think that you're quite thick-skinned, but you're fighting for such a rare divine sword after all. Chapter 29:13. Her lips twitched. I think you're quite thick-skinned, but you're fighting for such a rare divine sword after all. If those men had the chance, they wouldn't be so thick-skinned. Besides, you're only representing the female side, you're not really wearing women's clothes. Rongyue Tianlan sighed. It's simple. Just now the manor master said the rules. A woman can only find one partner to pass the test, and she has to choose from the men who chose to fight for the sword for her. Just now there were several women who were surrounded by many men. If this woman chose one of them, then the others would be eliminated and would no longer be qualified to enter the path. Both of us chose Princess Ji Xinyue, but Princess Ji Xinyue wasn't here. You didn't want to reveal your true identity, so naturally I had to be the sacrifice. So that's how it was. Ji Xinyue finally understood. She didn't expect that she would miss so much information while she was in a daze. After Rongyue Tianlan finished speaking, he looked at her with bright eyes. What else do you want to ask? Ji Xinyue paused and said, Supreme Deity Rongyue, you're fighting for this sword to give to your sweetheart, right? Why are you trying to pull my name into this? Your sweetheart can't come? But since you can replace my identity, you can replace your sweetheart's identity and find another man to be your partner. She was biting her lip when she said this. Fortunately, Rongyue Tianlan understood. He was waving his fan, and at this moment he closed it with a snap. Who do you think my sweetheart is? Ji Xinyue thought, how would I know who your sweetheart is? I didn't really investigate. Originally he was good to Ji Tianyue, and she thought he fell in love with her at first sight. Later she found out that wasn't the case. It seemed that Ji Tianyue was also used as a substitute. At that time she guessed that his real sweetheart had passed away. But later, Xie Fenglu said that he saw him drinking with the woman in white again, and said that he could take care of the sword. It was true that she had nothing to do with Rongyue Tianlan now. Whether he had a sweetheart or not had nothing to do with her, so she was too lazy to ask. But this time he had used her name and even said such a long story affectionately. Rongyue Tianlan looked at her. You don't believe what I said at all? Ji Xinyue didn't understand what he was referring to. What are you talking about? Chase after you again. The veins on Ji Xinyue's forehead bulged as she shook her head. That doesn't make sense. How is it unreasonable? I seem to have explained the reason. Ji Xinyue smiled and nodded. Your reason is very touching, but I won't believe a single word of it. We broke off the engagement because we didn't want to love each other. It wasn't because you said that the engagement was decided by our parents and wasn't worthy of our status. Of course, it could also be that this is still your compensation to me. You were afraid that my reputation would be affected, so you used this method to help me clear my name. If it's because of this, then I'm very grateful. However, there was really no need for that. Whether my reputation is good or bad, I don't really care anymore. Rongyue Tianlan looked at her. The reason for breaking off the engagement may be fake, but it's true that I want to pursue you again. Will you accept it? Ji Xinyue rubbed the space between her eyebrows and shook her head. No. Why? Ji Xinyue raised her eyebrows. Was there a need to ask why? Although she wasn't in the market, she didn't want to be his backup. He didn't want to be anyone's substitute. Chapter 29:14. If what the two maids said was true, then Rongyue Tianlan had indeed treated Tianyu as someone's substitute, which meant that he actually had someone he liked. If the two maids were lying, then Rongyue Tianlan's motives were even more unfathomable. He was clearly engaged to her elder sister, but had an ambiguous relationship with her younger sister. He went through so much trouble to break off the engagement, but then dumped her younger sister and pursued her elder sister again. Wasn't he crazy? That engagement was so difficult to break off. She and he had almost lost their lives there. Breaking off the engagement and then pursuing her again, did he think that the marriage pillar was a fool? I have no regrets. Ji Xinyue coolly threw down these 4 words and strode forward. Not everything could be redone, let alone this kind of emotional bond. Rongyue Tianlan's eyelashes drooped slightly. She actually still didn't believe him. He looked at her back for a moment, then followed her. This corridor was a little strange. When they first entered, it wasn't really dark, especially with their skills. Even in a completely enclosed space, they could still see things as if it was daytime. Therefore, Ji Xinyue walked very quickly, and Rongyue Tianlan followed behind her unhurriedly, always keeping a distance of 2 feet from her. not too far away in case she encountered danger and couldn't rescue her. They also didn't get too close to avoid attracting her repulsion. The distance they maintained was that of friends. Ji Xinyu knew that there would be tests in this corridor, such as monsters suddenly jumping out of the darkness to attack, or hidden weapons suddenly shooting out, so she was always on guard. But along the way they didn't encounter any danger, only the surrounding environment became darker and darker. This kind of darkness was gradual. Ji Xinyu didn't notice it at first, but when she did she found that it was already dark all around. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't see her surroundings clearly. Even when she turned back to look, she couldn't see Rongyue Tianlan, who was only 2 feet away from her. She frowned slightly, then took out a luminous pearl from her bosom and held it on the tip of her knife to illuminate the place. The luminous pearl that could always shine like a small light bulb in the dark was now like a stone that couldn't emit light, not even a fluorescent light. Her surroundings were still pure darkness. What was going on? Was there something wrong with his eyes? Ji Xinyu could not help but raise her hand to rub her eyes. Before her fingers could touch her eyelids, her wrist was suddenly grabbed tightly by someone. Rongyue Tianlan's voice rang out beside her. "Don't rub it. It's not your eyes." Ji Xinyu subconsciously looked in the direction of the voice. She could clearly sense that he was right beside her, but she couldn't see him. Ji Xinyu was not afraid of anything in her life, except for 2 things: cockroaches and darkness. Even she didn't know when she started to be afraid of these 2 things. It seemed to be a problem brought about by her birth. Therefore, even if she was looking for a quiet room to meditate, she would not choose a particularly closed room. Instead, she would choose an open and bright place, even if the quiet room was a snow cave. She was already a little traumatized when she entered this long and narrow tunnel. Now that she couldn't see anything, the trauma in her heart could cover the sky. The surroundings were very quiet. It was so quiet that they could only hear each other's breathing. It was as if they were the only living beings in the universe. This black, what's going on? Ji Xinyu tried her best to calm herself down. There should be a sky-concealing cover in this passageway. We are all inside that cover, Rongyue Tian explained. Chapter 29:15. There should be a sky concealment cover in this tunnel. We're all inside it. Rongyue Tianlan, who was beside her, explained and let go of her wrist. The sky concealing cover can block out all the light in the world, so any night vision skills are useless here. I once had a friend who had this thing in his sect. He often used this thing to test the disciples who entered his sect. Ji Xinyu clenched her fists. Using this thing to test people? Is your friend a pervert too? Rongyue Tianlan was silent for a moment, then admitted sincerely, he is indeed a pervert. He paused again. Even his wife often praises him like this. Ji Xinyu? Was this a compliment? In a dark environment, even if nothing came out, it would still give people a sense of insecurity. Ji Xinyu was originally very nervous, but after this conversation with Rongyue Tianlan, she felt the tension in her heart lessen a little. In absolute darkness, it was difficult to distinguish directions. She activated all the senses in her body, sensing all the movements around her. People in the dark were actually the most nervous about what was behind them, because they often felt that there was some unknown danger behind them that would grab them. But now Ji Xinyu was not worried about what was behind her because he was behind her. Although she could not see him, she could clearly feel his presence with a faint warmth, which made her feel much calmer. Although Ji Xinyu did not know the specific purpose of Rongyue Tianlan's sword, she inexplicably believed that he would not harm her, and was a trustworthy partner. With him here she felt much safer. It seemed that the darkness was not so scary. Can't you rub your eyes in this kind of cover? Ji Xinyu asked. There was silence behind her. I don't know. Ji Xinyu. Then he had quickly grabbed her hand just now, giving her a fright, thinking that he had some blinding poison on his hand. Although I don't know, it's always safer to be careful. Rongyue Tianlan added from behind, my perverted friend would occasionally add some ingredients to the cover. People who enter this kind of absolute darkness will subconsciously rub their eyes. The ingredients he added were the kind of medicine that can blind people for 3 days after rubbing. Ji Xinyu shuddered. So perverted? Yes, he has always been this perverted. Rongyue Tianlan did not deny it at all. Ji Xinyu was silent for a moment. You have a good relationship with him? This time Rongyue Tianlan's voice was a little deep. We are friends who have gone through life and death together. I have cleaned up a lot of messes for him. He often puts his life in my hands. Every time that person fell asleep he would come to bother him. He had even been the person's counselor for a few times. He had even been enslaved by him to save people a few times. He had even cheated a lot of good wine and fruits out of him. Ji Xinyu blurted out, "If that's the case, then he is quite similar to your cousin." She had also helped Rongyue Tianhuan clean up a lot of messes. Whenever that brat was in a dangerous place, he would entrust his life to her. As long as she was by his side, he would dare to cause any trouble and provoke any monster. Rongyue Shenlin sneered, "Tianhun can't be compared to him." Ji Xinyu misunderstood. "He's not as good as your cousin? Then you're really pitiful to have such a friend." Rongyue Shenlin had the urge to laugh again, but shook her head. "I'm not pitiful. Although it is a little troublesome to be friends with him, it's a good thing that we have similar interests. It's not easy to find a confidant in life, so even if he is quite perverted, I am willing to be friends with him no matter how troublesome it is." Chapter 29:16. Ji Xinyu was speechless. It turned out that supreme deity Rongyu was a masochist. It was said that fish would look for fish and shrimp would look for shrimp. His friend was a pervert, and this supreme deity Rongyu was also quite perverted. At the very least she couldn't figure him out. She was often bewildered by the things he did. Her wrist was grabbed by him again. "Why aren't you talking? What are you thinking about?" Ji Xinyu felt that supreme deity Rongyu liked to touch her recently. He pulled her wrist as if it was his own. However, he was too fast and he often did it in the dark or when she was lost in thought. He often succeeded. His palm was warm and it made her feel inexplicably anxious as it pressed against her wrist. She didn't want to be too close to him, so she pulled her hand back. "Nothing." She quickened her pace and put some distance between them. "Let's go quickly. We'll talk about it after we get into the top 5. Rongyu Tianlan raised his hand and looked at his empty palm. He could clearly feel her resistance towards him. He could also clearly feel his heartbeat when he held her hand. He really liked her. He liked her so much that he always wanted to be close to her. He always wanted to have physical contact with her. Even the slightest touch on her skin could make his heart beat faster. At this point he couldn't care less about his previous life, or what his previous battle soul was like. The person he liked now was her, his fiancée who had been engaged to him for more than 3,000 years. He went through so much trouble to break off the engagement, but he didn't expect that he would still fall in love with her. He couldn't lie to himself. He didn't want to use the feelings of his previous life to tie himself down in this life. "So Jiu, I'm sorry." At most, he would automatically separate the battle soul and let it form its own body to find Jiu and make a good marriage. He couldn't do it himself. This was the decision he made after thinking for a long time. He didn't want to let down his feelings in this life, so even if Shinjioli and his wife called him a jerk in the future, he would accept it. It was probably because he had hurt her too much that she still resisted him. It wouldn't be easy to get her back. Fortunately, he had already made his feelings clear. No matter how difficult it was, he would persevere. In any case, both of them were immortals. He had plenty of time to waste with her. Unless she really had someone else she liked and married someone else, he would never let go. Although it was in absolute darkness, with Rongyue Tianlan's martial arts, she could still vaguely see some things. For example, he saw a liquid silently creeping towards her from the front. It was about to reach her feet, but she didn't notice it at all and continued to walk quickly. He leaped into the air and stretched out his arm to catch her. "Be careful," he growled. Ji Xinyu was caught off guard and fell into his arms again. By the time she reacted, he had already carried her and flew away. He was hugging her from behind, with one arm around her waist and the other around her leg. The two of them were flying at a low altitude, and her entire back was completely pressed against his chest. Ji Xinyu's body stiffened slightly. She couldn't see anything, but she subconsciously tilted her head to listen. Other than the airflow caused by their flight, she couldn't sense anything else. Could this person be taking advantage of her again? Ever since he came in, he had pulled her wrist several times. This time it was even worse. He hugged her directly. Chapter 29:17. She clearly had nothing to do with him anymore. He also knew that she was a woman, so why was he hugging her so frequently? One had to know that men and women should not touch each other. She was unhappy, so she activated her telekinesis and slapped him on the chest. "Rongyue Tianlan, don't touch me, let me go." Her skills were not weak and she suddenly attacked, so Rongyue Tianlan could not avoid her. Under her attack, his body trembled and he fell with her in his arms. Ji Xinyue did not expect that he would rather take her attack than let her go. He would be fine as long as he let go. While she was in a daze, the two of them fell rapidly. The two of them were originally Ji Xinyue below, and Rongyue Tianlan above. Although Ji Xinyue could not see the ground, she knew that once they landed, she would be his meat cushion. Forget it, meat cushion, so be it. Ji Xinyue could not hit him a second time. She was prepared to be hit, but when she looked down, her eyes widened. This space was originally pure black, but now there were pinpoint red dots of light below. The red dots lit up very suddenly, and in the blink of an eye, they spread into a large area. Those red dots were denser than sesame seeds, and as far as the eye could see, there was a river of red dots flowing below, and they were falling into the river of red dots. Each of them was smaller than a sesame seed. Could they be the eyes of some species? Ji Xinyue had slight trypophobia, so when she saw these densely packed red dots, her scalp almost exploded. Her whole body stiffened. Rongyue Tianlan, who was falling with her in his arms, suddenly flipped over. Ji Xinyue's vision blurred, and then it was pitch black again. She could not see the red dots anymore. Then she felt his body pause as if he had forced his feet to land on the ground, and then flew up again with her in his arms. The moment he landed on the ground, she heard a fine cracking sound, as if he had stepped on a pile of small things. Buzz buzz buzz. The red dots below suddenly flew up and rushed towards the two of them. The space was originally extremely quiet, but now it was like a nest of wasps had suddenly flown in. The fine sound of flapping wings made one's hair stand on end. In the absolute darkness, the fine red dots rolled over like thick clouds, making it impossible to see what they were, but they were definitely alive. It seemed that he had come to hug her just now because he saw this, and not because he wanted to take advantage of her. Rong Yuishenlin flew extremely fast in the dark with her in his arms. However, when he landed on the ground just now, it was as if he had stepped on Pandora's box. Countless small red dots in front of them lit up and flew up. They began to surround and intercept the two of them. What are they? Ji Xinyue suppressed the guilt in her heart and asked in a low voice, her fingers clenched tightly. Blood parasite worm. Rongyue Tian answered with 3 words, and her body suddenly sank again. Rongyue Tianlan, Tianlan on the other hand, blood Tianlan Gu and Tianlan Yu Tianlan. But Tianlan Lan Tianlan with Tianlan. Once they were alarmed, they would relentlessly pursue an attack. They would not stop until they had bitten the opponent into a skeleton. She did not expect there to be one here. She watched as the blood Gu rushed towards them from all directions like a tsunami, and they could not avoid it. Chapter 29:18. Just as Rongyue Tian was about to cast a spell, Ji Xinyue suddenly moved in his arms, as if her arms were about to move. Rongyue Tian was shocked. Don't move. I won't. If she hit him again, he wouldn't be able to hold her. He was about to say, I won't do anything to you, but he stopped halfway. A faint green light rose up from Ji Xinyue's arm. Both of them were enveloped by a flat circular cover. This cover was quite heavy. Rongyue Tian couldn't control the cloud anymore, and fell to the ground with her in his arms. Almost at the same time, the blood parasite worms also attacked and slammed into the flat circular cover like a violent storm. Fine slapping sounds could be heard, as if they were hit by countless quicksand. What is this? Rongyue Tian's surprised voice was heard. One of his arms was still holding Ji Xinyue, while the other hand started to touch the cover. The cover was slightly soft and felt like fish skin, a little slippery and a little cold. Although Rongyue Tian was a knowledgeable deity, this was the first time he saw this. He liked to hunt for treasures, and when he saw something he had never seen before, he couldn't help but touch it again and again. Ji Xinyue's voice trembled in his arms. Don't touch. Rongyue Tian's hand stopped, and he stared at her in his arms. Her back was facing him, so he could only see her long black hair that flowed like water. This cover wasn't big, the two of them were squeezed inside, body to body, there wasn't any space at all. The slightest movement between them could be sensed by the other party. Her body was warm and she was in his arms, his lips were almost behind her ear, her body had a faint fragrance that intoxicated him. Just now he was in a hurry to save her, and he was chased by the blood parasite worms, so he didn't notice that he was in her arms and only reacted when she hit him. Now that the two of them were squeezed in this cover, their skin was touching, and they were out of danger for the time being. Rongyue Tian hugged her, his heart fluttering. He could naturally feel her trembling and was puzzled. What is this cover? Gu defense barrier. Ji Xinyue said these 3 words feeling a little bitter. This cover was given to her by a friend who played with goo. He said that once it was activated, it could prevent all goo worms from eating it. It was a first-class item. There weren't many people who played with goo in this world, and ordinary people couldn't easily come into contact with goo worms, so Ji Xinyu casually threw the cover into her storage space to let it rot. Until today, when she encountered these goo worms, she finally remembered. It was also her first time using this thing, but she didn't expect it to be so perverse. It was actually connected to the user's touch. Just now, Rong Yuishinlin had clearly only touched the inner wall of the anti-goo shield. She, who was holding the shield, actually felt as if his palm was touching her body, and it was even touching a more sensitive area. Ji Xinyu had lived for thousands of years, and had almost always walked the Jianghu dressed as a man. Although she often made friends with all kinds of people because of her own caution, there were very few opportunities for them to touch skin. She had never been touched by anyone before, therefore she was still inexperienced in this aspect. Right now, her entire body was curled up in Rongyue Tianlan's embrace. If he were to touch her like this, that feeling, she couldn't say it. Her heart was beating twice as fast, and her blood seemed to be flowing twice as fast. Her heart was in a panic, and the blood was still rushing towards her face. Chapter 29:19. She thought that he would just touch it once, but she didn't expect him to touch it again and again. She couldn't help but tremble and finally stopped him. Fortunately, Rongyue Tianlan was still quite obedient. He stopped when she didn't let him touch her. This allowed Ji Xinyu to finally breathe a sigh of relief. However, Rongyue Tianlan's next sentence caused her heart to skip a beat. Goo Defense Shield? This is the first time I've heard of this name. His body moved slightly. Ji Xinyu knew that this person was very curious. She was afraid that he would reach out his claws again, so she said fiercely, "You're not allowed to touch it again even if it's the first time you've heard of it." Rong Yuishinlin was speechless. Why was this girl so nervous about him touching it? Was she afraid that he would break it? He looked up and saw that their shield had crashed into the pile of blood parasite worms after it landed. The blood parasite worms were very persistent. They flew around the shield and gathered into a group to attack the shield fiercely. They made swooshing sounds that were more rapid than the dense rain. Rong Yuishinlin knew about these blood parasite worms. Although they were small, their teeth were very sharp. Once surrounded by them, even a rhinoceros with thick skin would be bitten into a skeleton in an instant. Even a steel fortress around him would be corroded by the venom secreted by the blood parasite worms. But now, this defensive barrier was only a thin layer, yet it was able to withstand the attacks of the blood parasite worms. It was obviously very sturdy. Why was she still afraid of him touching it? Rong Yuishinlin had a rebellious mentality. The more others didn't want him to do something, the more he couldn't help but want to do it. He didn't want to touch the shield at first, but now he wanted to touch it again. He moved again. "Don't move." Ji Xinyu's voice was fierce, with a hint of nervousness. He couldn't even move? Rong Yuishinlin looked at the densely packed blood parasite worms outside the cover and asked a very realistic question. These blood parasite worms have a special characteristic. If they don't bite their prey, they won't retreat. In other words, they won't disperse on their own no matter what. Then, are we going to stay in this cover for a long time? Rongyue Tianlan didn't object to it for a long time. He and she were both immortals now. Even if they didn't eat for a few years, they wouldn't starve to death. They could still be together day and night and cultivate feelings. In fact, it was not bad. However, if they were trapped here, the sword would have been taken away by someone long ago. His breath was right behind her ear, carrying his characteristic warm breath as it blew on her ear. Ji Xinyu's ears were burning hot, as if they were covered in chili sauce. As he spoke, her body also became numb from the wind. Damn it! She cursed in her heart. Her ears had always been her Achilles heel, her sensitive area. Even if someone of the same sex whispered in her ear, her body would still feel numb. What's more, the person who was whispering in her ear was Rongyue Tianlan. That kind of numbness was even more powerful. It could be described as numbing. He had only said a few words, but her ears were already burning red like coral beans. Don't talk. Ji Xinyu could only shout again. Rongyue Tianlan, who was behind her, stiffened slightly and sighed softly. You can't even talk? Xinyu, you're so fierce. There was a hint of grievance in his voice. Ji Xinyu? She shivered again and shouted, Shut up. Chapter 29:20. Rongyue Tian could see it. He lowered his eyes and looked at her red little ears. He seemed to have suddenly realized something. The corners of his lips curled up into a smile. Sure enough, he stopped talking. His eyes started to stare at the Gu defense shield. He looked at the faint blue light flowing on it and finally saw that it was actually a Sanskrit character. Ji Xinyu looked at the densely packed red dots outside. Because of the reflection of the Gu defense shield, she could finally see the appearance of these blood Gu worms. Each of them was the size of a mung bean and their shape was exactly the same as a cockroach. However, their mouth parts were sharp needles that were blood red in color. The red dots she saw just now were the sharp mouths of these blood Gu worms. Ji Xinyu felt like 1,000 alpacas were roaring in her heart. She was afraid of the dark, afraid of cockroaches, and had trypophobia. Now all three of them were gathered in one go. Goosebumps rose and fell on her body. Her arm that was supporting the Gu defense shield trembled slightly. If possible, she wanted to faint. But she couldn't faint now. If she fainted, she wouldn't be able to hold the shield. The person who gave her this Gu defense shield also gave her an extremely complicated incantation. Every word of this incantation was very difficult to understand and the length was also very long, so it was also very difficult to memorize. That person taught it to her more than 10 times before she could barely remember it. Fortunately, her memory was quite good. As long as she remembered something, she wouldn't forget it easily. This incantation was originally thrown into the corner of her memory. Now that she took it out and recited it silently, she still stuttered a little at first. In addition, there was Rong Yu Tianlan with a strong aura beside her, so she was always on guard. It was easier for her to memorize the wrong words when she was multitasking. And once she said a wrong word, the shield would tremble a few times like a pendulum, as if it was going to fall apart at any time. This made Ji Xinyu's heart palpitate. This was not what made her even more miserable. What gave her a headache was that she had been squeezed inside the cover, which had been flat like a pie. She had originally planned to roll out of the tunnel with the cover, but this flat shape did not allow her to roll at all. She had also tried to control the shield to fly, but it was all in vain. This shield didn't move at all. In other words, although the blood parasite worms couldn't bite them, they couldn't escape either. Not only did the densely packed red dots outside not disperse, more and more of them gathered. This made her even more alarmed and her heartstrings trembled. In her nervousness, she mispronounced another sentence. This time she mispronounced a crucial sentence. The cover actually rose and fell, shaking violently. She didn't realize it herself. If there was someone standing outside at this moment, they would see that the cover was like a quilt wrapped around the two of them, and the quilt was moving up and down. "Tell me the incantation, I will support it." Rong Yuetian, who was behind him, suddenly spoke. This time he raised his head slightly and spoke to the top of her head. At least it didn't hurt her ears anymore. He actually saw through it. Ji Xinyu shook her head slightly. The mnemonic chant was too complicated. Furthermore, the mnemonic chant wasn't the only thing that was needed to support the mnemonic chant. It also required a special method of circulating one's qi. It wasn't something that could be taught in a short period of time. Rong Yuetian was silent for a moment before she spoke again from behind her. "Are the runes circulating on this cover the mnemonic chant?" Ji Xinyu's eyes widened. He could see the runes on the cover? Didn't they say that only the person supporting the cover could see them? Did this guy have superpowers? Chapter 29-21. She couldn't help but turn back to look at him. But the two of them were too close. When she turned back, her lips brushed against his. Their lips touched and Ji Xinyu froze for a moment. She immediately turned her head back, her heart thumping wildly. Strange. This guy was like her nemesis. Every time she met him, she was in danger and he took advantage of her. Was he doing it on purpose? Rong Yuishanlin suddenly moved behind her. Ji Xinyu was nervous. In shock, she threatened, "I'm warning you, don't get any ideas." Rong Yuishanlin sighed. "Heroine, I didn't move. You invaded my lips, you took advantage of me. My first kiss was taken away by you." Ji Xinyu was speechless. That seemed to be the case. She blurted out again, "I didn't do it on purpose." Rong Yuishanlin secretly licked his lips and laughed silently, but his voice was still full of grievance. "You mean you took advantage of me and don't want to take responsibility?" Ji Xinyu almost scratched her head. Wasn't it the girl who was at a disadvantage? He was a man and he wanted someone to take responsibility? This was also her first kiss and second kiss. She didn't even ask him to take responsibility. She steeled her heart and said, "How is this taking advantage? All I did was touch your lips." Most? She paused. Rong Yuishanlin was curious. At most what? At most you let me touch you again? Is that what you want to say? Ji Xinyue's face was hot. She did want to say that out of impulse, but before she could say it she felt that it was inappropriate, so she stopped in time. However, the man behind her was too smart. He could guess what she was going to say halfway through her words and even said it out loud, blocking her right there and then. Fortunately, she was quick-witted. You're thinking too much. How can a man care about this? Because I'm a different man, Rong Yuishenlin said leisurely. Ji Xinyue was speechless. This person was not an ordinary narcissist. How was he different from the rest? Ji Xinyue realized that she was especially impulsive when she was with him. She was just complaining in her heart, but she didn't expect to say it out loud. You're different? How are you different? I'm sorry I couldn't tell. Rong Yuetian smiled and said, Are you interested in me now? Turn around and I'll tell you the details. Ji Xinyue's lips twitched. Since when was she interested in him? Which part of her sentence did he read that from? She would never turn back. So as to avoid bumping into him again, you've misunderstood me. I'm not interested in you. She snorted and attacked him. Didn't you want to know what makes me different? Rong Yuetian's lips brushed past her earlobe, intentionally or unintentionally, bringing a warm and numbing feeling. Ji Xinyu shrunk back and said angrily, Don't talk to me here. Rong Yuetian stared at her red earlobes and her heart fluttered. It turned out that she was so sensitive here. He had the urge to bite her earlobe, but he also knew that this girl was impulsive. If he really bit her earlobe she would definitely fall out with him and give him a slap. Rongyue Tianlan had already been hit by her palm just now. Rongyue Tianlan didn't want to be hit a second time. The little girl's martial arts skills were not low. She was not a showy fighter when she slapped him, however if he stole a kiss she might not be able to react in time. Chapter 29-22. Should he pretend to kiss her ear unconsciously? Ji Xinyue saw that there was a moment of silence behind her. She didn't know that the big bad wolf behind her was already scheming something. She thought that he was finally stopped by her words and let out a sigh of relief. I'm handsome. There's no man more handsome than me on this continent. This is the first thing that makes me stand out from the rest, Rongyue Tianlan suddenly said slowly from behind her. My martial arts is the best on this continent. No one can compare to me. This is the second thing that makes me stand out from the rest. Other men at my age basically have a bunch of wives and concubines, but I don't even have a wife. This is the third thing that makes me stand out from the rest. I'm such an outstanding man, but I still retain my virginity. This is the fourth thing that makes me stand out from the rest. Ji Xinyue listened to him list one by one, two by three and was stunned. When she was with him before, why didn't she realize that this person was actually such a scoundrel? She didn't know that the previous Rongyue Tianlan wasn't sure of his own feelings. He was even conflicted about his previous life. When he was with her, he always restrained himself unless he couldn't help himself, but now he had confirmed his own feelings. Naturally, he would completely let go of his hands and feet to pursue her. His attitude towards her was also much more aggressive. He was originally a playboy and had read many novels. He could even be Shinjuli's counselor when it came to relationships. He had given many great ideas to Shinjuli. Now that it was his turn, he naturally wouldn't be bad. I'm such a unique man. My first kiss was snatched away by you. Don't you think I should let you take responsibility? Rongyue Tianlan's topic finally turned in this direction, ending his uniqueness. Ji Xinyue was stunned for a long time. Finally, she seemed to have remembered something and sneered, I'm a man now. Why should I take responsibility when a man kisses you? Only a woman would let someone take responsibility. Rongyue Tianlan's arm had been hugging her waist. At this moment, he moved up slightly and stopped at the undulation. A man? Are you sure? Ji Xinyue finally realized that something was wrong with her. She felt as if she was struck by lightning. When did I change back? When you entered this cave. Rongyue Tianlan explained, you didn't realize it until now, did you? This cave can remove all pretense. Ji Xinyue. She blushed again. Ever since she entered the cave, her vision had been blacked out and she had been in a state of nervousness. Indeed, she did not realize that she had regained her female form. It turned out that she had always been in her female form and was being taken advantage of by him without realizing it. This was really... Originally, Ji Xinyu had been hugged by him the whole time and she had thought that he was hugging a male body. Although it was strange for two grown men to hug each other, the situation was urgent, and it was understandable that they were trying to avoid the blood goo worms. But now in this state, Ji Xinyu felt a little hot in his arms, causing even her ears to burn. Let me go first, men and women shouldn't touch each other. Ji Xinyu came up with this excuse again. All right. Rong Yu Tianlan readily agreed and immediately moved her arm away from her waist. However, the space in the cage was too narrow. His arm moved away but his body was still stuck to hers. The two of them were still stuck together like a Taoist yin-yang fish. Being so close to him, although Ji Xinyu tried her best to remain calm, her face was still burning. She tried her best to shrink her body, trying to reduce the surface area of contact with his body. Chapter 29-23. Rongyue Tianlan, who was behind her, suddenly took a deep breath and said, "Don't move." Ji Xinyu was stunned. What was it now? However, she soon realized that something was wrong, because their bodies were pressed against each other, her buttocks were also between his legs. She could clearly feel a hard object arching up there. Although she was a virgin, she was still a person who often roamed the pugilistic world and often called those men brothers. Naturally, she knew some things. At this moment, once she felt the change in Rongyue Tianlan's body, she was stunned and her face immediately turned red. "You, down?" She almost wanted to call him a pervert but she held it back. She stiffened her body and wanted to move, but the place was only so big, where could she move to? That part of him was getting harder and harder. Ji Xinyu panicked. "Rongyue Tianlan, take it back. If you do this again, I'll castrate you." She moved even harder. Rongyue Tianlan was speechless. How could he take it back automatically? He didn't want it to be like this. This was a normal reaction as a man, okay? The woman he loved was so close to his arms and moving around like crazy. It would be strange if he didn't have any reaction. He raised his arm and held her body, saying in a low voice, "Don't move. If you're obedient, it will return to normal. If you continue to move, I can't guarantee what I will do to you." This was naturally not the time to be aroused, so Rongyue Tianlan tried his best to control himself. He stared at the blood parasite worms outside that were still desperately bumping around, diverting his attention and hers at the same time. "The person who gave you this cover didn't teach you how to move it?" Ji Xinyu also glanced at the densely packed goo worms outside. Her scalp went numb again and her body stiffened. She quickly looked away and shook her head. No, the blood parasite worm was an extremely rare goo worm. Other goo worms didn't have such a clingy characteristic. The person who gave her the cover probably didn't expect her to encounter this, so he only taught her how to avoid the goo worms inside and didn't teach her how to move it out. There were more and more blood parasite worms, and the outside was like a red cloud tightly surrounding the cover. No matter if she looked up or down, all Ji Xinyu could see were those needle-like red dots. They were like the eyes of a ghost in hell, causing her heart to tighten. She wished she could close her eyes, but she couldn't because she had to hold up the cover. A hand suddenly reached over and covered her eyes. "Are you afraid of this? If you're afraid, then don't look. Don't worry, we'll go out and do some research." Ji Xinyu hurriedly grabbed his hand. "I have to look or else this cover will break." She suddenly stopped. While she was bickering with him, she had forgotten to recite the incantation. However, the cover was still in good condition. It was even larger than before and much more stable. Just now, because she was nervous, she often misread the incantation, causing the cover to tremble. But now the cover was as solid as a fortress. There was only one possibility for this to happen. Ji Xinyu couldn't help but turn back. "You also know how to support this barrier?" Rongyue Tian looked at her with a smile. "It's not difficult." He was an ancestor who often made artifacts, so when he saw the flowing runes on the cover, he began to study it. To him, it wasn't impossible to break the spell. His body was close to Ji Xinyu, so her method of channeling and the flow of qi in her body couldn't be hidden from him. Chapter 29-24. Therefore he quickly grasped the method to support the shield. He was an exalted immortal, so it was naturally much better for him to operate the shield than Ji Xinyu. Ji Xinyu was so distracted that she did not notice when he silently took over the task. Ji Xinyu could not be distracted while operating the shield, but Rongyue Tianlan could multitask and joke with her while operating the shield at the same time. The inside of the shield was as dark as the outside. Ji Xinyu still could not see anything other than the light from the blood parasite worms outside the shield. However, Rongyue Tianlan could still see her. Her face was still red, and her eyes were as bright as stars. Rong Yuishinlin's heart skipped a beat. He suppressed the urge to pull her into his arms and kiss her fiercely. It was not the right time yet. He could not scare her away directly. Take a rest first. I will figure out a way to bring this shield out. Rong Yuishinlin's voice softened. With me here, you don't have to be so stubborn. She was clearly afraid of the dark and these worms, but she insisted on holding on. Ji Xinyu lowered her eyes slightly. He was probably the only person in the world who would always pamper her like a child when they were together. It made her heart, which had been frozen again, faintly show signs of loosening. But he had already broken off the engagement with her. The guard guarding Misty Mountain had also said that they were originally in a heavenly marriage. Once the engagement was broken, the line of marriage would be completely broken. It would be as difficult as ascending to the heavens for them to reconcile. It could be said that it was impossible. Since they were not fated to be together, why bother? She closed her eyes and refused to think about this problem. She began to regulate her breath and meditate. If she was in the same situation as others, Ji Xinyu would not dare to relax for even a moment. However, with him, she inexplicably relaxed and quickly entered a meditative state. After an unknown amount of time, Ji Xinyu seemed to feel something and woke up from her meditative state. She slowly opened her eyes. What she saw was still those densely packed goo worms dancing in the air. She shivered. Awake? How do you feel? Rong Yuishinlin's voice came from in front of her. Ji Xinyu subconsciously answered, much better. After answering, she realized that something was wrong. Before she entered a meditative state, her back was leaning against Rong Yuishinlin. Now he was in front of her and there was even some distance between them. Did the space become bigger? Ji Xinyu looked around and was surprised to find that the originally flat goo barrier had turned into an oval. Rong Yuishinlin said, I tried many methods just now but I couldn't move it. I could only change its shape. He pondered for a moment and said, I have thought of another way, but that method requires our cooperation. Ji Xinyu immediately asked, what method? Rong Yuetian paused for a moment and said, I'm afraid you can't accept this method. Forget it, I'll think of another way. If he told her about his idea, she might think that he was taking advantage of her. Although he really wanted to take advantage of her, he didn't want to do it at this time, and he wouldn't take advantage of her when she was in danger. When necessary, he was still very moral. Ji Xinyu, however, became impatient. You're a grown man, speak more straightforwardly. Stop hemming and hawing. You haven't said anything yet. How do you know that I won't accept it? Rong Yuetian looked at her pair of big bright eyes and paused for a moment. She had no choice but to tell her the method. This method was a little complicated. After he finished speaking, Ji Xinyu didn't reply for a long time. Chapter 29-25. Rong Yuishinlin coughed and said, I'd better think of another way. He knew that she would not agree because that method was too wretched. However, it was the most practical and fastest way. Ji Xinyu stared at the blood parasite worms outside and suddenly asked, How long have I been meditating? Rong Yuishinlin answered quickly, 45 minutes. Ji Xinyu thought for a moment and asked again, How much do you know about that sword? Rong Yuishinlin glanced at her and pondered for a moment. That sword is made of meteoric iron. The sword spirit is very powerful and it is said that it can cut through everything. What about the meteoric iron chain? Ji Xinyu's eyes sparkled. Rong Yuishinlin raised his eyebrows and looked at her. Why are you asking this? Is there something locked by the meteoric iron chain? Ji Xinyu paused for a moment. I'm just asking. Can that thing be cut? Rong Yuishinlin pondered for a moment and slowly shook his head. The meteoric iron chain does not belong to this world. It is said that it can lock everything, including gods and demons. Once it is locked, there is no way to open it. The sword you are looking for now is also made of meteoric iron. It may have some special abilities, but it is hard to say if it can cut through the meteoric iron chain. Ji Xinyu did not speak and seemed to be thinking. Rong Yuishinlin glanced at her and sighed softly. He did not speak and turned his gaze back to the cover and began to think of other methods. He had actually studied and tried many methods, but none of them worked. The cover seemed to be welded to the ground and could not be moved an inch. Other than that method, he had already tried all the methods he could think of in his mind. How could he think of a new one now? He was not confident in his heart. Ji Xinyu suddenly said, Let's try that method. Rong Yuishinlin was startled and looked up at her. She bit her lips and her cheeks were red, but her expression was firm. I want that sword. So we must break out as soon as possible. Ji Xinhue was the kind of person who would immediately act once she made up her mind. Since she had decided to do it, there was no reason for her to hesitate. She pounced forward and threw herself on him. "Let's begin." He didn't forget to threaten, "This is an emergency. If you dare to take advantage of me, I'll cripple you." The idea that Rongyue Tianlan came up with was indeed a bit perverted, but it was also very reasonable. The two of them needed to hug each other, but it was not an ordinary hug. Instead, it was a flipping hug. Both of them had to hug each other's legs and bend their bodies into a semicircle. When the two of them hugged each other, they would form a complete circle. Then each of them would circulate a skill to activate the Gu barrier. Once it was activated, they would be able to roll out with it. According to Rongyue Tianlan's explanation, only this kind of method could achieve the balance of yin and yang in one's power. Only then could one truly activate the function of the Gu defense barrier. Ji Xinhue felt that only a perverted person like Rongyue Tianlan could come up with such a perverted idea. However, she did agree with the theory. Moreover, the theory was similar to some of the methods that the mysterious person who saved her had taught her. A martial arts practitioner's body was as soft as a willow branch. Ji Xinhue bent down and hugged Rongyue Tianlan's legs, placing his legs on her shoulders. Rongyue Tianlan did not expect her to be so valiant. When his legs were hugged by her, he felt slightly numb. Even an indescribable part of his body showed signs of lifting up. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.